Chapter 687. After all, a strong aura didn't necessarily mean that one's combat capability was strong. It could only reflect one's combat capability to a certain extent. As long as the aura and coercion of both sides couldn't suppress each other and couldn't interfere with each other's mind, they would have to rely on real combat skills and strength to determine the winner. In Chunlin's view, although Chen Hao's aura was stronger than his, it didn't affect him at all. In particular, Chen Hao was just at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage, which was 2 stages lower than him. "Big brother," Fan Dongsheng, who was watching from afar, exclaimed. At first, it was awkward to call him Big Brother, but after a few times, he had become familiar with the fake Big Brother. Although he couldn't compete with Chen Hao's strength, he still had basic insight. When he saw what Chen Hao had done, how could he not be frightened? He was a typical good man. At this moment, he was completely concerned about Chen Hao, his big brother, whom he owed a lot. He didn't think that if Chen Hao lost, he and the Pandong school would face the end. "Brother Dongsheng, don't worry." However, to Fan Dongsheng's surprise, the Pandong school, who was watching the battle in the distance, whispered. There was no worry in her eyes, but a glimmer of excitement. Fan Dongsheng was slightly stunned when he saw her like this. This is Brother Cold Blood. Brother Chen Hao's favorite way of fighting. Brother Cold Blood? When I met Brother Chen Hao, he used the alias Cold Blood. I later learned that Chen Hao was Brother Cold Blood. Oh, no wonder Brother Chen Hao helped us. It turns out that he knew you. Fan Dongsheng suddenly understood and said. Chen Hao had told him in secret that if he wanted to help him, he had to have a valid reason. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for him to intervene. After all, Chen Lin was not an unpardonable person. The emotional swaying of the Pandong gang was indeed a slap in the face for any man. No one could calm down. Of course, the reason why Chen Hao intervened was not entirely because Long Ting and Chen Shui had asked him to help. Instead, it was because Chen Hao did not have a good impression of Chen Lin. After all, Chen Lin had feelings for Long Ting before. It was just that he did not go overboard, so Chen Hao could not flare up. Ah. Doesn't Big Brother Chen Hao know you? Hearing Fan Dongsheng's voice transmission, Fan Donglu was surprised. No. I've never met Big Brother Chen Hao before. Even his name was on the combat power ranking. When Big Brother Chen Hao came to help us, he told me to call him Big Brother and find a reason to help us. Fan Dongsheng said. This. Hearing Fan Dongsheng's words, Fan Donglu was so surprised that she was speechless. She thought that Chen Hao might really have intervened because of her, as Fan Dongsheng had said. However, looking at Fan Dongsheng beside her, she did not dare to think too much. A man who was willing to die for her, who knew her enemy well, who had grown up with her, who had recovered from his soul injury, and whose talent was not inferior to hers. What was there to be dissatisfied with? Chi, chi, boom, boom, boom. In the void, Chen Lin was frantically urging his energy to maintain the giant hand, but it was flying everywhere in the sky and on the ground. Anything that came into contact with the destructive energy would be turned into dust, but no one could see Chen Hao, who had already entered the giant hand. This scene looked a bit funny, as if Chen Lin had gone crazy and was venting alone, but no one laughed. Because everyone knew clearly how powerful and terrifying the attacks Chen Hao had to endure within the restrictions of the laws of Chen Lin's enormous hand. Although no one could see it, they could tell from Chen Lin's appearance that he was frantically attacking Chen Hao under this absolute advantage. I'd like to see how long you can last. Infernal mystical fire. Burn it for me. Chi. The raging orchid profound fire surged out from Chen Lin's palm. At this moment, the world was abruptly set ablaze by the surging heat. In an instant, the origin energy within a radius of 1,000 miles was ignited, burned, and madly condensed. Moreover, it poured into the giant hand, causing the entire hand to flicker with dark blue flames. At this moment, Pan Donglu, Pan Dongsheng, and many other onlookers cried out in surprise. Ninefold mystical fire. Basically, only heaven immortal experts could control the ninefold mystical fire. Chen Hao was already in the law domain, and now that he was being burned by the ninefold mystical fire, everyone broke out in a cold sweat just thinking about it. If they put themselves in his shoes, no one present thought that they could withstand it. After all, Since Chun Lin had released the ninefold mystical fire, it was definitely not just the space of the ninefold mystical fire, but a divine power formed by the ninefold mystical fire. How powerful would it be in the law domain? Moreover, Chen Hao could not avoid it. However, seeing this scene, Chen Shui and Long Ting looked at each other strangely, feeling sorry for Chen Lin. If this was not displaying one's slight skill in front of an expert, what was? Chen Hao, who had inherited the mystical fire, might have been a threat to Chen Hao before he entered the primitive secret land. But now, Chen Hao had already mastered the mystical fire, and his use of the mystical fire was incomparable to that of ordinary people. In the endless void, the blue flames covered the sky and the sun. The surrounding cultivators, under the terrifying heat of the ninefold mystical fire, did not retreat. Instead, they activated their protective upstanding chi, as they could not bear to miss this battle that symbolized the peak of the Earth's celestial stage of the human clan. At this moment, within a radius of thousands of miles, almost 10,000 miles, it was completely blue. Every cultivator's face was painted blue, and it looked indescribably strange. When the ninefold mystical fire covered the sky, everyone was breaking out in a cold sweat for Chen Hao, who was in the giant hand that covered the sky, Qi. A brilliant sword radiance, which penetrated the giant hand that covered the sky, suddenly shot out. The sword radiance was pitch black, and it contained terrifying energy and a destructive aura. It directly tore the surrounding space, which contained the powerful law of heaven, apart. Circles of black ripples appeared, and a sharp sonic boom resounded through heaven and earth, penetrating people's hearts. Break! Rumble! A strand of Chen Hao's dark flame that was even more dark blue and crystalline, had even condensed into numerous talisman markings that flowed around his body. Along with his clear and resounding shout, the enormous hand that covered the sky collapsed and charged into the sky, and it was like an azure blue waterfall that tore through space. Under the astounded gazes of everyone present, Chen Hao turned around and slashed out with his sword towards Chen Lin, who'd already arrived below. Chi! Rumble! In an instant, the sword radiance bloomed like a thunderbolt, and then it exploded with a thunder-like explosion. It was accompanied by a majestic energy pressure that surged out. The terrifying destructive sword light forcefully tore apart the dark blue profound flame that filled the air. The black color that represented destruction poured out from the dark blue light screen and spread out, causing the entire heaven and earth to sink into darkness. What was black was the sky, and what was dark was the heart. Even Chen Shui, Long Ting, Pan Donglu, Pan Dongsheng, and the other onlookers were shocked at this moment, as if the end of the world had arrived. What a terrifying destruction sword essence. It's so far away, but my mind is affected. It's too terrifying. If I bear the brunt of such a sword essence attack, I won't have the strength to fight back at all. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the destructive sword radiance that Chen Hao emitted in the void. It was like a black waterfall that covered the earth, and they were all shocked. Little Shui, he also gave in to you. When Long Ting saw this scene, she was also extremely surprised, but she looked at Chen Shui and transmitted her voice. Her strongest point was her physical strength. In the past 12 years she had fought many times. Once she broke out with her strongest physical strength, Chen Hao would definitely surrender obediently. Once Chen Shui broke out with an increasingly powerful destruction sword essence, Chen Hao would also obediently be punished. This was the happiest and proudest thing for the two women. Didn't he give in to you? Chen Shui, who was wearing a blue dress, smiled. She was obviously deceived by Chen Hao, just like Long Ting, but a warm current flowed in her heart. How is this possible? At the same level he fell into my law territory, coupled with the purgatory mystical flame. He's actually safe and sound? Chen Lin was also shocked. He did not expect that Chen Hao, who was only at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage, would be so powerful. In Chen Lin's opinion, not to mention Chen Hao, even if it was the top 20 Earth celestial stage experts in the Divine Temple who dared to enter his law territory, he was confident that he could defeat or even kill them with the purgatory mystical flame. Originally, when Chen Hao was relying purely on the law territory, Chen Lin had launched countless attacks, but they were all blocked by Chen Hao, who had extremely fast reactions and powerful combat skills. Therefore, he was forced to use one of his strongest techniques, the Purgatory Mystical Flame, which was also the most suitable for the law territory. However, he did not expect that the powerful technique formed by the ninefold mystical flame, which was still within his law territory, would not hurt Chen Hao at all. No wonder you dare to interfere in my affairs. However, you dare to be so arrogant in front of me with just this? Boom. The moment Chen Hao's destructive sword radiance appeared, there was a loud explosion around Chen Lin, and surging energy gushed out from his body. Clang. At the same time, a sword cry that sounded like a dragon's roar tore through the sky, and a treasure light soared into the sky and spread out. In an instant, the entire space shook and rippled due to the sword being unsheathed. A divine artifact sword. A divine artifact sword. Regardless of whether it was the onlookers or Chen Hao, they were all shocked. Chen Lin was already wearing a set of powerful divine artifact soft armor, and at this moment he actually wielded a divine artifact sword that was mainly used for attacking. Just this alone was not enough to shock anyone. After all, with Chen Lin's status, there was no reason for him to only possess a divine artifact issued by the Divine Temple. The reason why Chen Hao and the others were shocked was that at this moment, Chen Lin had only drawn the sword out of the sheath, and he had not activated it at all, but the power of the sword itself had already caused the heavens and earth to shake. This meant that Chen Lin had already completely controlled this divine artifact sword. Once it was fully activated, what kind of shocking power would it release? The peak of the initial stage of the Earth's celestial stage. You should be proud of yourself for being able to force me to use all my power. Unfortunately, you will definitely die today. Golden Dragon Devour. Roar. Sword radiance, dragon roar, and extremely fierce killing intent that covered the heavens and earth bloomed at the same time. Slaughter Sword Principle. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 688. Slaughter Sword Dao. Slaughter Sword Dao. Chen Hao's pupils constricted. Ever since Chen Hao had fought with Yi Wendao of the Eastern Continent, he hadn't fought with an expert who had comprehended the Slaughter Sword Dao. To be precise, it was rare to find someone who had comprehended the Slaughter Sword Dao in the cultivation world. It was just as rare as the Destruction Sword Dao, because the Slaughter Sword Dao and Destruction Sword Dao were too domineering. Unless one obtained an inheritance, it would be very difficult for an ordinary person, or to be precise, a person with normal emotions, to comprehend them. One had to know that in the world, there was always a trace of life for any ability or law. Nothing was absolute. This was the great change art that deduced the mysteries of the world. However, the Slaughter Sword Dao and Destruction Sword Dao were extreme Daos. The Slaughter Sword Dao was to exterminate the opponent's life force. It was a killing move, a killing move, a killing move, and a killing move that severed all life. The Destruction Sword Dao was even more ruthless. It was to destroy the world, destroy everything. Under normal circumstances, only someone who was extremely stimulated would have such an emotion. It was precisely because of this that not many people could comprehend it. Chen Hao's Sword Dao was obviously inferior to Chen Hao's, but he was using a saint artifact that complemented each other. When he executed it, its might was even more terrifying than the Destruction Sword Dao that Chen Hao had executed. The sword pierced out with a fierce and violent sword aura that dominated the world. It was like a bolt of lightning, and the crisscrossing slaughter intent covered the world, and caused one's hair to stand on end. Bang! Rumble! Rumble! The moment the two sword lights of different colors collided, the sword aura swept out and seemed to cut the space into pieces, causing a terrifying explosion. Chi, 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 chi. What was even more shocking was that Chen Lin and Chen Hao didn't retreat but advanced instead. The sword lights in their hands flickered as they continuously brandished it. Everywhere they passed, it was as if a string of bombs had been set off. It was extremely terrifying and was approaching at an astonishing speed. At the same time, the energy of the two became more and more condensed and condensed. Humph! Instead of retreating, this brat dares to fight me in close combat. He's really seeking his own death. With my Golden Dragon Sacred Sword in hand, I can easily cut down a top-grade spirit artifact. How can his sword compete with me? Chen Hao was confident that he would win, and he believed that his combat skills were not inferior to Chen Hao's. Even if he was slightly weaker, he could use his divine weapon to force Chen Hao into a passive state for a short period of time. Ever since I obtained the secular sword Dao, I haven't encountered the massacre sword Dao. Now that I've encountered it, I can make use of this opportunity to comprehend it. So what if it's a saint artifact? Although my 5-element sword is only a supreme-grade spirit treasure, it is the combination of the 5 elements. Moreover, it is a natal magic treasure that has been cultivated step by step with my growth. Chen Hao's unexpected and obviously unwise behavior naturally had his reasons. Haha. Today, I'll reenact the way I dealt with Yi Wendao in the past. Chen Hao made up his mind. Back then, he had been nothing more than a newborn calf, not even in the Golden Core realm. Yi Wendao, a fellow disciple of the same sect, had not been very strong either. Compared to the current Chen Hao and Chen Lin, the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. Chen Hao could kill him with a single breath. However, the foundation of the law of consummate arts would never change. The same move, when used by the current Chen Hao, was naturally much more powerful. Ding 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 boom boom boom. In an instant, the two of them collided head-on. Crisp sounds of collision, accompanied by raging sword chi, suddenly exploded. It was extremely thrilling. However, Chen Hao frowned and the surrounding spectators were similarly puzzled because Chen Hao, who was in a dangerous close combat, had actually withdrawn his destruction sword insight, and the trajectory of his sword had undergone a shocking reversal. Every single swing of his sword seemed to be drawing a circle. Even more strange was that just by looking at Chen Lin's attacks, they were dazzling and too much for the eyes to take in, whereas just by looking at Chen Hao's attacks, they were gentle and slow like a willow in the wind, fluttering in a carefree manner. But the dense sounds of metal colliding told everyone that Chen Hao's speed of drawing his sword was absolutely not slow. This sort of visual difference was like the two of them were in two different heavens and earth, and they possessed different temporal laws. It was truly strange to the extreme. In fact, at this moment, even Chen Hao himself had this strange feeling. Originally, he had only intended to use the ultimate martial arts technique that he hadn't used for a long time, the Taiji two-form sword. But now, after he used it with his comprehension of the Heaven Dao Law, state of mind, soul, and true essence, he instantly entered into an empty world. All the sounds around him seemed to have disappeared, and everything seemed to have become extremely slow. This caused Chen Hao to be unable to determine whether it was his thinking and reaction that had instantly become extremely fast, or Chen Lin's attacks were really very slow. Chen Lin could be said to be ferocious, and every move of his was filled with murderous intent. His attacks were simply played in slow motion before his eyes, and it was completely effortless for him to capture all the trajectories of his attacks. Moreover, he had enough time to leisurely block, deflect, and attract with his sword. He didn't even need to use the Taiji fist that he had prepared to do two things at once. Just relying on the Taiji two-form sword, he easily dealt with Chen Lin's attacks. At the same time, Chen Lin's slaughter sword essence also filled his surroundings, and the changes of every strand of sword essence could be seen clearly. What's this? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Including Chen Shui and Long Ting. Everyone stared blankly at the sky. Although they didn't know what was going on, they felt that it was powerful. They even suspected that they were seeing things, and that they were hallucinating. Chen Lin's eyes flashed with a trace of shock, and then he activated his power even more crazily and violently, striking out with his sword again and again. But what made him extremely terrified and frustrated was that every strike, no matter how tricky the angle of attack was, how powerful the power of the attack was, and how mysterious the ultimate martial arts were, they were all easily blocked by Chen Hao. Every time his sword clashed with Chen Hao's sword, he would activate the golden spear chi, wanting to break Chen Hao's sword. But every time, it was as if he had sunk into a very sticky quagmire. Not to mention breaking Chen Hao's sword. Even performing the next move would be greatly affected. What made him even more shocked was that he felt that he had clearly captured the trajectory of Chen Hao's sword, and had even seen the trajectories clearly. But every time, Chen Hao clearly didn't change, and his sword seemed to automatically send itself to Chen Hao. The bystanders were utterly unable to imagine Qinlin's feelings at this moment. The more he fought, the more frustrated and shocked he felt. Qinlin knew that if this continued, not to mention killing Chen Hao, he probably wouldn't even be able to harm a single hair on Chen Hao's head. This ultimate martial art is truly strange. No, I can't fight him in close combat. Hiss! Qinlin didn't hesitate any longer. He slashed out with his sword, and then he suddenly retreated with the intention of resuming the long-range ultimate martial art battle. But his thoughts were beautiful, yet reality was cruel. Hiss! Chen Hao was like a strand of drifting breeze, light and gentle, yet he followed like a shadow, and he exerted the entanglement formula to the limit. Want to run? Dream on. I'm enjoying this state of unexpected events, so how could I not have an opponent? As a result, Qinlin and Chen Hao went back and forth in the sky, one retreated while the other advanced. One of them became crazier, scarier, and faster as the battle went on, while the other remained calm and collected. However, his momentum was unshakable like a mountain, and his movements were as calm as the ocean. No one knew that in Chen Hao's current state, no matter how ferocious Qinlin's attacks were, Chen Hao could no longer be described as being at ease under the premise that he didn't have an absolute advantage in terms of strength. To be exact, he had only split a portion of his attention to play with Qinlin, and most of his attention was focused on this wonderful state. Many Wuxia ultimate martial arts originated from Taoism, and many of them have the highest realm of twisting heaven and earth, or even time and space. Could it be that in this state, I've entered the independent law of time? Chen Hao pondered in his mind, especially when he thought of Tai Chi, the martial arts technique that was closest to Taoism. It made Chen Hao's imagination run wild. Phew. I didn't expect that I could enter such a mysterious state by using the Taiji Yin-Yang sword for fun. It seems that I have to practice it again in the future. Over the years, with the improvement of Chen Hao's cultivation, he had already integrated the combat skills of the martial arts world into his basic combat skills. It could be said that he had been using the martial arts world's unique combat skills all the time, but he had never used a single state of mind and all the moves seriously. But now, he had unexpectedly used them and obtained such a miraculous effect. It was really unexpected. This also allowed Chen Hao to understand that as his comprehension of the laws of the heavenly Tao increased, his mental state and soul transformed, and he once again obtained a new interpretation and understanding of the ultimate techniques in the martial arts world. At the same time, it also made Chen Hao understand that on Earth, the ultimate techniques of the martial arts world and the divine abilities of the Taoists were definitely much more powerful and unfathomable than he had imagined. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. After an hour of madness, the lively Qinlin had become a tiger that had lost its fangs. Although he still had the power of a tiger, he could no longer jump around. At this moment, Qinlin would rather Chen Hao severely injure him than continue fighting. But now, no matter what he did, he could not get rid of Chen Hao. What made him want to vomit blood was that every time he wanted to withdraw from the battle by inflicting serious injuries on himself, Chen Hao would kill him with a fatal move, forcing him to fight with all his strength. But now he was not injured. Even a fool could tell that Chen Hao was playing with him. But what could he do? Did he want to be lazy and admit defeat? Sorry, he would not give it to him. If he did not die, he would have to continue fighting. 2 hours later, Qinlin had become an old tiger that was struggling at death's door. Whether it was the speed of his attack or his strength, they were both pitifully weak, but Chen Hao was still the same as before. Finally, after 3 hours, when Qinlin no longer had the strength to attack, he saw that Chen Hao had once again killed him with a single blow, and was about to force him to fight back. Even though he wanted to die, he was really unwilling to die just like that. However, he really didn't have any strength left to fight back. Thus, this brother's vision turned black in despair, and he directly fell from the sky. Bang! Qinlin fell dizzy, but he woke up. Like a dead dog that had lost all its strength, he widened his eyes in surprise, as if he could not believe that Chen Hao did not kill him. After all, he had refused to stop when it was time to fight. What made him even more confused and dumbfounded was that Chen Hao did not land with him this time. Instead, he was still in midair, leisurely dancing alone, dancing with his sword. Chapter 689. Is this his first time in this state? It must be so. After a brief shock, Chen Lin's face became extremely embarrassed, but at this moment he could no longer hesitate. Leaving while Chen Hao was unwilling to withdraw from this state was his best choice. After all, although he was a disciple of the Knights Templars, and was one of the best among them, he had refused to stop at a certain point. At this time, even if Chen Hao killed him, he had asked for it. It did not violate the law of the vast universe galaxy. The most important thing was that he was too ashamed to continue to stay. Chen Lin took a deep breath and suddenly turned into a stream of light. He did not say a word, nor did he look at the present cultivators, and left dejectedly. Chen Hao saw this but did not stop him. It was enough to save the lives of the Pandong Current and Pandong Sheng. He had no reason to clean up after them and cause endless trouble. As for the others, even if Chen Lin had just recovered his breath, his speed was not something that the Pandong Current and Pandong Sheng could catch up with. Moreover, even if they could catch up, the Pandong Current would not dare to kill Chen Lin. What's more, if the Pandong Current and Pandong Sheng killed Chen Lin, Chen Hao would be the culprit. It was enough that he had saved their lives. How could they let the Chen Lin family take revenge on them? Chen Shui and Long Ting would not chase after him. They felt that it was inappropriate to let Chen Hao come forward and end up in this life-and-death duel. When they saw that Chen Hao did not even hurt Chen Lin, they knew what Chen Hao was thinking. It was not easy to be a good person, especially in the cruel world of cultivation. At this moment, although the battle was over, no one left. They were still staring at Chen Hao, who was dancing alone in the void, trying to comprehend something from it. The Pandong Current and Pandong Sheng held hands tightly. When they saw Chen Lin leave, they were relieved. After that, they looked at Chen Hao with gratitude. Even the Pandong Current did not know that she looked at Chen Hao with infatuation. Of course, the people who were also paying attention to Chen Hao did not notice it. After a full hour, Chen Hao's swordsmanship became faster and faster. What shocked everyone was that his swordsmanship, which looked light and graceful, suddenly sped up, causing the surrounding heaven and earth energy to revolve around him as he danced. In an instant, the heaven and earth energy around him condensed into rotating swordsmanship. His figure disappeared, turning into a huge ball of swordsmanship. Rumble. Chi. Chi. Chi chi chi. As the sphere's aura grew stronger and stronger, it became more and more terrifying. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion that resounded through the world. Immediately, countless rays of sword light shot into the endless void like locusts. Rumble. Rumble. Continuous explosions rang out, spanning thousands of miles and lasting for half a minute. At this moment, Long Ting and Chen Shui both opened their mouths wide in shock. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. If such an attack were to hit them, it would definitely be an instant kill. Phew. Not bad at all. Good people are indeed rewarded. It was worth it to meddle in other people's business this time. Whoosh. Looking at his strongest attack, Chen Hao sighed with excitement in his heart. Immediately his figure flashed and he came to Chen Shui and Long Ting's side. Isn't it powerful? Powerful. Very powerful. The two women were still staring at the terrifying energy fluctuations in the distance, as if they had not recovered from their shock, and they murmured, "Brother! Brother Chen Hao." At this moment, Pan Dongxing and Pan Donglu came over hand in hand. They bowed deeply to Chen Hao, and Pan Donglu said, "Chen, brother Cold Blood, thank you for saving our lives." Pan Donglu had already called Chen Hao brother, but when she wanted to thank him, she changed it to Cold Blood. It was not that she wanted to do anything, but because she already thought that Chen Hao helped them because of her friendship with Cold Blood. So, it seemed more intimate to say so. Chen Hao frowned slightly and immediately said coldly, "If you want to thank someone, thank my two wives. I'm not in the mood to meddle in other people's business. No need to thank me. You'd better be careful. That Chen Lin will not give up." Long Ting glanced at the two and said, let's go in." Chen Shui looked at Pan Donglu with a strange look, and directly pulled Chen Hao and said to Long Ting, "Okay." Chi. The three punched at the same time, and the bright seven-colored light, which contained the mystery of the first barrier, suddenly broke the barrier. Immediately, The three disappeared in front of Pan Donglu and Pan Dongsheng. Pan Donglu was a little stunned, but Pan Dongsheng still looked at the place where the three disappeared with gratitude. Womanizer. As soon as they entered the barrier, Chen Shui said these 4 words. What? Chen Hao asked frankly. But she's a slut. That's more like it. Hearing Chen Shui's words, Chen Hao smiled proudly. What are you talking about? Long Ting, who was a little careless, looked at the two puzzled and asked. She didn't notice the strangeness of Pan Donglu at all. But Chen Shui and Chen Hao were both clever people, and they could feel the abnormality in a strange look. How could they not see the affection that Pan Donglu inadvertently revealed for Chen Hao? Of course, this affection was actually nothing, and it was far less exaggerated than Chen Shui's slut. It was just clear that Pan Donglu had a relationship with Chen Lin, and then the current childhood sweetheart Pan Dongsheng. At least it showed that Pan Donglu was indeed not the kind of woman who could be dead set on a man. Even if she could do it, she probably had other thoughts in her mind. In fact, there were many such people in the cultivation world. Men were basically this kind of birds, and a man like Pan Dongsheng was definitely 1 in 100 million. Women like Pan Donglu, especially before losing their primordial yin, basically accounted for more than half of them. It was undeniable that Chen Hao's attraction to women was too strong. If it was someone else, it would not necessarily be so. Nothing. Chen Hao and Chen Shui said at the same time. Start comprehending. Long Ting frowned and glared. She didn't ask any more questions and said directly, Brother Hao, how does Pan Donglu know that you are cold-blooded? I'm also curious. Chen Shui asked. Just now, Pan Donglu called Chen Hao cold-blooded brother, and Chen Shui guessed that it might be a fake identity that Chen Hao used in the second world. Now Long Ting asked this, so it was naturally true. What's there to be curious about? When I was in the arena of Donglu City in the second world, she fought with me once. She probably recognized my aura. No way. Although I was fully armed in the second world, my charm was really strong, like a firefly in the night. Let's not talk about this. Hurry up and comprehend. I'll comprehend it first. This harvest is good. The state you entered just now. Yes. When this sect ruin is settled, I'll teach you some real unique skills. Okay, let's get started. I really can't write it, so I'll just write it like this for the time being. Chapter 690. Gasp. Chen Lin, who was running away while swallowing spiritual elixirs to recover quickly, had a distorted expression on his handsome face. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. I, Chen Lin, was defeated by a cultivator at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth celestial stage. Otherwise, how can I keep my face? He should have entered a wonderful state by accident. Otherwise, when I was exhausted, he had no reason to stop. I can't let that bastard couple go. But, thinking of Chen Hao's abnormal strength, Chen Lin's eyes flickered. Finally, he endured it. Now he couldn't do anything to his opponent. At least, if he went back in the short term, he would be humiliating himself. He had to admit that this time, he had suffered a complete setback. He had thought that he could reap a great harvest after encountering the powerful treasure land of the sect's relics. He didn't expect to encounter the meat in his mouth and fall into the mouth of another person. If he had taken back the Fan Donglu and killed Fan Dongsheng, it would have been fine. But he didn't expect that Chen Hao would interfere and refuse the conditions. He wanted to have a life and death duel with Chen Hao, but he lost completely. I'd better go deeper first. The law of time here is very long. I'm afraid I'll have to stay here for at least hundreds of years, which is enough for me to reach the heaven celestial stage. At that time, I'd like to see how he can stop me. Humph. Chen Lin took a deep breath and made a decision. Moling Takshu had contacted him about Chen Hao before he set off. At that time, he intuitively thought that it was because of Long Ting. So Moling Takshu had specially asked him to take care of Chen Hao. Therefore, as they went deeper, the chances of meeting each other became higher and higher. It was naturally better to borrow the power of Moling Takshu. But Chen Lin didn't think about this at all. He had been defeated by Chen Hao and lost face. He had to defeat Chen Hao with his strength in order to wash away his shame and save his face. Half a month later, in Chen Hao's sect ruin, Cultivators continued to arrive one after another. There were already several thousand people, all of them cultivators that had set out from East Flow City. Throughout the entire sect ruin, besides the core palace that was protected by layers upon layers of barriers, everything else had already been turned upside down. Finally, everyone sat around the barriers and began to comprehend the powerful lost arts contained within. As for whether or not they could obtain the inheritance left behind by the sect within the barriers, the vast majority of people knew that there wasn't much hope. Even so, this was an excellent place to cultivate, much less the lost arts contained within the barriers. Naturally, no one wanted to leave. An invisible streamer hidden in the void appeared in the space millions of miles away from the sect ruins at an astonishing speed, and was still moving forward quickly. It was Chen Hao's miniature aircraft, Wuxia No. 1. DDD. Masters, lock onto Master's life aura. Simulate the scene. Not long after, Small Wisdom One's voice sounded in the aircraft. Hiss. Immediately, the scene of the sect ruins appeared in the aircraft. The ruins of an ancient sect? Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei looked at the simulated scene in front of them, and suddenly revealed a trace of surprise. Master's life aura is in the core of the sect ruins, and is protected by layers upon layers of magical law barriers. This little wisdom is temporarily unable to contact Master. Masters, should we land? Small Wisdom One asked in an emotionless mechanical voice. It was the product of the combination of earth science and magical law. It was Chen Hao's spiritual artifact spirit, and also the brain of Wuxia No. 1. At this moment, it could only sense Chen Hao's life aura by means of scientific detection, but it couldn't sense its master, Chen Hao, as an artifact spirit. Clearly, the barrier had sealed the connection between it and the law of divine ability within the barrier. Han Mei, shall we go in and take a look? Hearing Small Wisdom One's words, Venerable Yun Wei looked at Venerable Han Mei and said, Look, there are thousands of cultivators cultivating in the core. There must be great benefits. Yes, they are all cultivators of the human race, so there shouldn't be any problem. Let's go down and take a look. Hiss. Hearing their words, Small Wisdom One directly opened the cabin door of the aircraft and said, Masters, if there is any trouble, you just need to fly into the air quickly. Small Wisdom will come to your rescue. Okay. Hiss. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei immediately transformed into two gusts of wind and blended into the heaven and earth. Both of them had also mastered the carving technique that Chen Hai had left for Wuji Immortal Palace. However, due to the restriction of their innate talent, they couldn't conceal themselves to the same level as Chen Hao and Chen Shui. Especially in this space filled with origin energy, they could only conceal themselves from ordinary cultivators when the other party wasn't paying attention. However, they didn't expect to hide anything with this technique. They just wanted to prevent the people around them from sensing their sudden appearance. Let's go. In more than 10 years, the strength of these two, who were at the peak of the late stage of the Earth's celestial stage, had greatly improved. However, they still couldn't touch the barrier. This situation was no different from other cultivators. When they arrived near the sect ruins, they had already released their auras. Their minds were filled with surprise and excitement as they sensed the extremely powerful origin energy and the law of heaven in the sect ruins. They had never thought that they would be able to enter such a powerful place to cultivate. They knew very well that among all the cultivators who had entered the primitive secret land, they were basically at the bottom since they were from a small planet. Not to mention the cultivators in the vast universe galaxy. Even the cultivators from other vital planets in the Yang star were stronger than them. Therefore, when they got this opportunity, their only plan was to find a remote place to cultivate until the end of the primitive secret land. They didn't want to be killed. This allowed Little Wisdom No. 1, which was the first to set off, to find the two of them without much effort. When they saw Small Wisdom One, their surprise was indescribable. However, they were afraid of being a burden to Chen Hao. At first, they refused to look for Chen Hao. It wasn't until Small Wisdom One told them about the law of time and Chen Hao's plan that they agreed. Now looking at the valiant sect ruins, the two of them were naturally excited. After observing the other cultivators for a while, they understood what was going on, and began to comprehend the barrier loss technique. However, "Hey old beauty, which army are you from? It's not in your army's territory. Why are you here? You're so weak and yet you're running around. Move aside. I'll take this place." In less than half a day, a middle-aged cultivator whose aura was extremely powerful to Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei appeared in front of them, and said domineeringly. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei frowned slightly when they heard what the other party said. However, they could only get up and give up the good spot. The situation forced them to give up. Otherwise, if they fought over it, it would be within the rules even if they were killed. They couldn't blame anyone else. Haha. Seeing the two obediently give up, the cultivator smiled and thought to himself, "Her aura is so weak but she's so beautiful. She must be a cultivator from a small planet under the jurisdiction of the 36 main planets. Otherwise she wouldn't be so weak. If I can get her, she'll be a good slave." Hey? Two old beauties, there are more and more cultivators in this sect ruins. With your cultivation, you won't be able to stay around the core barrier. I don't mind letting you stay together as long as you agree to be my servants. How about it? Looking at your appearances, you should be from a small planet. I'm a disciple of a powerful sect in East Flow City. Following me will be much better than staying on your small planet. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei's expressions flashed with a trace of anger. Their bodies paused for a moment before they quickly left. "You don't know what's good for you." The cultivator scolded and punched the barrier. In this situation, especially with the token transmitting information, even if he was strong, he wouldn't dare to violate the rules and force them to stay. After all, the other party had already given up the spot. "Han Mei, it seems that we won't be able to find the place." The two circled around the barrier, but more and more cultivators divided their own areas and didn't let anyone get close. Occasionally, they would see a gap, but the two didn't stop for long before new cultivators came in and seized it with their strength. "Forget it, we'll just cultivate in the periphery. The barrier's lost art is extremely profound. It won't be easy for us to comprehend it. Let's not join in the fun," Venerable Han Mei said. Although she said so, the expression on her face was obviously unwilling. Anyone who had the opportunity to comprehend a powerful lost art, but couldn't get close to it would feel unwilling. But what could they do? Brother Dongsheng, Pan Donglu and Pan Dongsheng, who had already broken through the first barrier, were comprehending between the first and second barrier. But at this moment, Pan Donglu, who had just comprehended a sentence of the incantation, suddenly saw two figures when he was looking at the increasing number of cultivators outside. His eyes locked on one of them, and he shouted to Pan Dongsheng. What's wrong, Pan Donglu? Look at that woman." Pan Donglu pointed at a figure outside and said. "What's wrong?" Pan Dongsheng looked in the direction pointed by Pan Donglu, and saw two women with weak auras who were obviously very old. Although they were middle-aged women who still had a charming appearance, there was nothing else about them that was eye-catching. "Don't you think they look exactly the same as Chen Xiaobai? They really look alike." Pan Dongsheng looked carefully and said after hearing Pan Donglu's words. Chen Xiaobai had changed his aura and appearance, but his changed appearance was indeed 80 to 90% similar to the middle-aged woman he saw. Furthermore, it was certain that after Chen Xiaobai changed his appearance, he would most likely look exactly the same as the middle-aged woman he saw. "Carefully sense her blood qi," Pan Donglu said again. "This, Donglu, I haven't paid much attention to Chen Xiaobai, and I'm far inferior to you in this aspect. What did you find?" Pan Dongsheng said. Chapter 691. Pan Donglu was very sensitive to aura, which was also a kind of talent. Although it was not a supernatural ability, it was very useful for recognizing people. This was also one of the reasons why Pan Donglu could conclude that Chen Hao was cold-blooded just by fighting with Chen Hao in the second world. Their blood qi seems to be a bit similar. "Dongsheng, let's go and have a look. They seem to be bullied. I think they should be related to Chen Xiaobai. Otherwise, Chen Xiaobai's appearance would not be so coincidental. Their blood qi is also a bit similar. Chen Xiaobai is Brother Cold-Blooded's Taoist companion and has helped us. If they are really related, we should help them to repay their kindness." "Okay." Pan Dongsheng said without any hesitation. What Pan Donglu and Pan Dongsheng saw was when Han Mei Immortal Venerable and Yun Wei Immortal Venerable had their spots snatched away again. It was also when they decided to give up the barrier lost art and cultivate on the side. At this moment, if Chen Hao, Chen Shui, and Long Ting were still in between the first and second layer of the barrier, they would have sensed the arrival of Immortal Venerable Han Mei and Immortal Venerable Yun Wei. Unfortunately, the three of them were too abnormal for the other cultivators. They had already broken through the fourth layer of the barrier, and were far ahead of the other cultivators. In this interlayer space, they could only sense the interlayer of the upper barrier. In other words, they could only sense the interlayer of the third and fourth barrier. Up until now, no cultivator had entered. You too. Just as Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei soared into the sky, and wanted to leave the barrier for a distance to cultivate, two extremely powerful auras suddenly chased after them. Two young people, a man and a woman, were only at the peak of the early stage of the human immortal realm, but they brought great pressure to Han Mei and Yun Wei. In an instant, Han Mei and Yun Wei knew that these two people were definitely the top geniuses of the vast universe galaxy. Why were they chasing after them? Don't panic, we mean no harm. Pan Donglu saw their expressions and said with a smile, "Excuse me, do you know Chen Xiaobai?" Chen Xiaobai? Han Mei and Yun Wei both frowned, but did not say anything. Due to their lowly status and low cultivation, they had to maintain sufficient vigilance, and did not dare to speak rashly when meeting anyone. They naturally knew who Chen Xiaobai was. When Little Wisdom No. 1 persuaded them to come over, it had already told them about the situation of the girls, including the fact that the girls were disciples of the temple, and that it was a fake identity. "We are Chen Hao, Chen Xiaobai, and Long Ting's friends. Brother Chen Hao and the other two have entered the depths of the barrier. I see that you look very similar to Chen Xiaobai, so," Pan Donglu said. Han Mei and Yun Wei looked at each other and Han Mei said, "Chen Xiaobai is my daughter. May I know who the two of you are?" Judging from the other party's attitude, there was no reason for them to lie to them. Therefore, when they met with Chen Hao, their identities would naturally be exposed. It was not a big deal to say it now. Hearing Venerable Han Mei's words, Flowing East Flo was slightly surprised. Although she had speculated that Venerable Han Mei was related to Chen Xiaobai, and that they might be related by blood, she did not expect that she was Chen Xiaobai's mother. After all, Chen Xiaobai was a disciple of the temple. She knew how strong his talent was. "You, Auntie, I was rude just now. This junior is Pan Donglu. This is junior's Dao companion Pan Dongsheng. Brother Chen Hao and the others saved our lives. Auntie, if you don't mind, can we take you with us? And this senior is?" Pan Donglu's expression suddenly became respectful and said. At the same time, she looked at Yun Wei and asked, "We are Chen Hao's master when he was young." Venerable Han Mei transmitted. She originally wanted to say master, but when she thought of Chen Hao's current strength, she added the word young instead. "Then thank you. Masters, you are welcome. It is our honor to be able to help you." Pan Donglu did not call them auntie, but master. It was obvious that she was standing on Chen Hao's side. When the cultivator who had just seized the positions of Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei saw Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei come back respectfully, his face suddenly changed. Without thinking, he hurriedly bowed to the four people of Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei. Then with a chi sound he flew away. Although he would not be killed at this time, after leaving the primitive mystic realm, it would be easy for Miss Pan Donglu, the number 1 genius girl of East Flo City, to kill him. How could he not be afraid? Fortunately, he was only trying to snatch a spot, and did not do anything too extreme. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei were shocked when they saw this scene. They were shocked by the power of Pan Donglu and Pan Dongsheng, and even more shocked by the status and identity of the geniuses of vast universe galaxy. Just because of Chen Hao, they were so polite and respectful to them. How strong was their disciple now? They could not imagine. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. DDD. When they were still tens of thousands of miles away from the sect ruins where Chen Hao was, a crisp voice suddenly sounded from an aircraft. "Mistress Huan Huan Lele, We have received a message from leader Xiaoji. Master is in the sect ruins tens of thousands of miles away from here. Two masters have arrived. There are many cultivators in the sect ruins, and the competition is fierce. They are all cultivators from East Flow City. Really? Lung Ninghuan's face showed extreme surprise and asked. According to the original estimate, it would take a few months to find Chen Hao. Unexpectedly, there was news at this time. Great. Floey, let's go faster. Lung Ningle stood up and said with surprise and excitement. Mistress, Chief Xiaoji ordered you to enter the sect ruins by yourselves. Floey needs to cooperate with Chief Xiaoji to welcome Little Lotus, Nether, and Little Dance. Is that so? Then we will go by ourselves. Thousands of miles will only take a few minutes, Lung Ningle said. Masters, according to Chief Xiaoji's message, after you enter the sect ruins, you will not be able to meet up with Master for the time being. At this moment, there are layers of barriers at the core of the sect ruins. All the cultivators are comprehending. After entering the barrier, Chief Xiaoji will only be able to sense the aura of life. Master, Chen Shui, and Long Ting have already entered the depths of the barrier. The two masters have also entered the barrier with the help of two genius disciples from East Flow City. Oh, I understand. Floey was the artificial intelligence of Floey. It was also the aircraft that Chen Hao specially refined for the Lung sisters. Chi-Chi, Lung Ningle and Lung Ninghuan turned into two streams of light and rushed towards the sect ruins with excitement. However, the two of them were the same as Chen Shui. They also concealed their true bodies. They were different from Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei. Their identities as disciples of the sanctum could help them avoid a lot of trouble. Moreover, the two of them were the same as Chen Shui. In just a few years, their strength had increased tremendously. The sisters' telepathy had already evolved to the point where their minds were connected. When the two of them joined forces, not to mention the cultivators of East Flow City, even ordinary disciples of the sanctum were no match for them. At this moment, there were already over 30,000 people in the sect ruins. Moreover, there were quite a few of East Flow City's senior captains and above. The proportion of temple disciples that were at the level of senior captains was even higher. This was also the reason why Chen Shui, Long Ting, and the others were riding a senior captain-level flying vehicle that was relatively close to them. In fact, those who came here were basically cultivators from the 30 to 40 aircraft nearby. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yin Wei had arrived earlier. Moreover, their auras were very weak, so not many cultivators paid attention to them. In fact, it was only the cultivators who had snatched their territory that paid attention to them. Therefore, when the cultivators present suddenly sensed the arrival of two powerful auras, they all looked towards the void. When they saw the two female disciples of the sanctum who were only at the peak of the earthly immortal stage, they were all surprised and puzzled. These cultivators had basically seen the images of the sanctum disciples sent by the East Flow teacher this time. Among them, the captain-level cultivators had even seen the true bodies of all the sanctum disciples. However, Lung Ninghuan and Lung Ninglu were obviously not from the East Flow teacher. Why would they come so far and come here? However, although they were puzzled, no one dared to provoke them. Any sanctum disciple who came here would be able to break through the first barrier in a few days. Their powerful perception and talent were not something that ordinary people could compare to. Although they had hidden their true bodies, the sisters' appearances were still exactly the same. After landing, there was no need for them to observe at all. There were enthusiastic cultivators who took the initiative to approach them and tell them how to break through the first barrier. They even took the initiative to impart some of their comprehensions to them. However, Lung Ninghuan and Lung Ninglu decisively refused. When one reached a certain status, the things one had to pay attention to were naturally different from ordinary people. If one didn't put on any airs, it would be nice to say that one wanted to form a good relationship with others. To put it bluntly, there were many people who wanted to curry favor with them. After understanding the key point, the two began to comprehend. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. Between the 8th and 9th barrier, Chen Hao comprehended another spell. He slowly opened his eyes and said, "Xiao Shui, Sister Ting, you two comprehend first. I have to go out and take a look." Some of them should be arriving soon. Chi. Just as Chun Hao finished speaking, Long Ting, who was immersed in her comprehension, suddenly shone with a resplendent rainbow light. She opened her eyes proudly and said, "Ehe. Brother Hao Xiaoshui, I've comprehended everything." "Oh, not bad. Out of the 9 barriers, 3 of them are suitable for you. Alright, you pass it to Xiaoshui first. I'll go out and take a look," Chun Hao said. Come back quickly. This might be the last barrier," Long Ting said. Hiss. Chun Hao disappeared on the spot. Chapter 692. Chun Hao did not investigate in the interlayer of the barrier. He directly rushed out of the barrier and entered the sect ruins. Sure enough, as soon as he stepped out of the barrier, Chun Hao sensed the existence of Xiaoji through the magical law of the aircraft. Master. As Chun Hao's magic weapon, Xiaoji One, who had a trace of intelligence, suddenly said excitedly in Chun Hao's mind. When did they arrive? Did the 2 masters receive them? Chun Hao asked. Yes. Master. The 2 masters were brought into the barrier by 2 genius disciples of East Flow City. One of them is called Pandong Flow, and he said that he is a friend of Master and Matriarch Chen Shui. Oh. Chun Hao was slightly puzzled. How did Pandong Flow and Pandong Xing know that Han Mei and Yun Wei are related to us? According to the information I monitored, it was because of Han Mei's aura and appearance that the Pandong Flow judged that she is related to Matriarch Chen Shui. When she first contacted the 2 masters, she asked Chen Xiaobai. At that time, the 2 masters were occupied by other cultivators, so she was helping the 2 masters. Chun Hao frowned slightly and immediately glanced at the dense cultivators around the barrier and the cultivators who could not get close. He immediately understood what was going on and secretly said, "This Pandong Flow's ability to recognize people is really amazing." Master, Huan Huan and Lele have also arrived. They just entered the barrier not long ago. Huanla was ordered by me to pick up the other matriarchs. Xiaoji One continued. Good. In this way, we will not leave the sect ruins in a short time. You also go to pick them up, lest they waste time looking for them. Yes, Master. Chi. Boom. Immediately, Chun Hao punched the barrier and broke through the first layer of the barrier. His powerful perception spread out. Chun Hao found that there were more than 10,000 cultivators who broke through the first layer. However, Chun Hao easily locked onto 2 familiar auras. They hadn't seen each other for so many years. Even though he had Chen Shui first, Chun Hao was still a little excited. This was definitely the first person he would be able to enjoy the happiness of having 2 wives, so how could he not be excited? After all, no matter what the beautiful sisters did, they were always together. When the time was ripe, Chun Hao would be able to enjoy the blessings of having 2 wives. Of course, this thought only flashed through his mind. This was not the time to think about Ruo Feifei. The biggest reason why he was a little excited was naturally not because of that. Chun Hao directly blended into the world, completely concealing his aura. A moment later, 2 figures who had concealed their true appearances and were sitting cross-legged with their backs facing each other appeared before Chun Hao's eyes. Hee hee. Chun Hao laughed mischievously in his heart. Then Lung Ning Huan, who was immersed in comprehending the second barrier, clearly felt a breeze blowing on her face. Although she was a little surprised, she didn't care, but this breeze was getting stronger and stronger. Just when she realized that it was man-made, she suddenly opened her eyes. Sister, what's wrong? Lung Ning Lu, who was connected to Lung Ning Huan's mind, sensed Lung Ning Huan's surprise and asked in her mind. No, nothing. Lung Ning Huan looked at Chun Hao's face that was inches away from her. Her face turned red as she replied to her sister in her mind. Sister, you're about to see him. Why are you so excited at this time? You should quickly comprehend it. Lung Ningla said after hearing Lung Ning Huan's reply. Lung Ning Huan, who was sitting cross-legged with her back facing Lung Ning Huan, naturally couldn't see Chun Hao. Similarly, Chun Hao, who had also concealed his aura, couldn't be sensed by her. However, she could easily sense Lung Ning Huan's mood. This was clearly a phenomenon that would only occur when thinking about Chun Hao. Ah, sister, why is your self-control so weak? So embarrassing. While the 2 were conversing, Chen Hao had already kissed Lung Ninghuan's tender lips. Lung Ninghuan closed her eyes shyly and clumsily replied to Chen Hao. She had lost all thoughts in her mind, only Chen Hao. It was also at this time that Lung Ningla said the words, "So embarrassing," because she felt the same way. But she thought it was just her sister's imagination. But just as she said those words, two large hands suddenly cupped her face from behind, causing her to scream in shock. Ha ha ha. Lung Ninghuan instantly woke up from her stupor and hurriedly pushed Chen Hao away. This fellow laughed out loud and pulled the two girls into his embrace. "Brother Hao." Lung Ningla looked at Chen Hao in surprise. Lung Ninghuan, on the other hand, allowed Chen Hao to hug her without making a sound because she was kissed. Chen Hao smiled and gently kissed Lung Ningli's lips, saying, "The two masters arrived earlier than you. I will first teach you the secret technique of the layers of barriers, then teach them." Chi. Rumble. Rumble. Ah? Long Ting suddenly cried out when she broke the 9th layer of barrier with a punch. What's going on? Chen Shui also looked around in surprise. Chen Hao, who took less than half an hour to return, was also very surprised. Could it be that this barrier will be completely destroyed if one person fully comprehends it? He taught the secret technique to the sisters Han Mei and Yin Wei because Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Sheng helped the two masters. Chen Hao didn't want to drag them down, so he taught the secret technique to the Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Sheng. However, they were separated by several layers of barriers. Even if he taught them, they would need some time to learn and comprehend it. Therefore, Chen Hao didn't wait for them. But at this time, after Long Ting taught him, and Chen Shui the secret technique of the 9th layer of barrier, they were about to break the barrier first. However, an unexpected scene occurred. All the barriers suddenly exploded violently with a punch from Long Ting, and all of them collapsed. Countless exclamations broke out. Whether it was the cultivators who were immersed in comprehending the secret technique, or the cultivators who hadn't comprehended the first layer of barrier, they were all shocked by the aura of the collapse of the barrier. Their eyes were filled with horror as they looked at the core of the ruins. Chi. An endless pressure erupted from the core. Countless seven-colored rays of light, like fireworks exploding in the sky, poured down from the 9 heavens. What is this? What a terrifying pressure. The gate of time and space. This is the gate of time and space. A disciple of the divine palace suddenly exclaimed. When the overwhelming pressure slowly descended from the void, countless people felt as if their souls were being pressed down. Even Chen Hao was extremely shocked. A disordered feeling that went straight to the depths of their souls emerged in everyone's hearts. Master, hurry, come with mistress and your master. This is the gate of time and space. It will teleport you to the secret realm. At this time, Old God's voice sounded in Chen Hao's mind. Gate of time and space. Hearing Old God's confirmation, Chen Hao suddenly pulled Long Ting and Chen Shui. With a chi sound, he turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the sisters at lightning speed. Soon after, he arrived beside Senior Immortal Han Mei and Senior Immortal Yin Wei. Everyone, hold each other's hands. Hug each other. At this moment, Chen Hao sensed the increasingly majestic and terrifying pressure, as well as the chaotic feeling. He was slightly excited. Even he did not expect that this sex relic would not contain an absolute art inheritance, but a space-time gate. The so-called gate of time and space was mentioned in the information of the primitive secret realm. Whenever the gate of time and space appeared, all the cultivators present would be teleported to the sacred training grounds left behind from ancient times in the primitive secret realm. The reason why Chen Hao was excited, other than the sacred training grounds, was that the gate of time and space wasn't a single one. It ran through the entire universe of the primitive secret realm. In other words, the cultivators who could enter the sacred training grounds definitely weren't cultivators from the sect ruins. Cultivators from other races could also encounter the gate of time and space that would teleport them to the same sacred training grounds. Chen Hao knew that in a short while, everyone present would be teleported to an unknown secret realm. Chen Hao pulled Long Ting and Chen Shui, Long Ting pulled the sisters, and Chen Shui pulled Han Mei and Yin Wei. Brother Chen Hao. Pan Donglu and Pan Dongxing both looked at Chen Hao. Hanmei Immortal Venerable and Yunwei Immortal Venerable had a good impression of Pandong Lu and Pandong Sheng who had helped them. Seeing their expressions, they naturally knew that they wanted to go with them. Therefore, both of them looked at Chen Hao inquisitively. Chen Hao didn't hesitate and nodded. Since he had just taught them the unique skill contained in the layers of barriers, there was no need to abandon them now. Seeing Chen Hao nod, Apotheon Yunwei directly grabbed Pandong Lu's hand. Gate of time and space. Haha. I didn't expect to encounter a gate of time and space so soon. Great. The first disciple of the Divine Palace who called out the gate of time and space said excitedly. The third group of East Flow City, gather here. Once you enter, there is a high chance that you will encounter cultivators from other races. Now it's time for us to unite. The fourth group, come to me, be quick. It's too late. If you are not from the third group, you are also welcome to join. I am the leader of the first group. No matter who you are welcome to join. I am the leader of the eighth group. I guarantee a fair distribution. Who wants to join? Chi. When the temple's disciples, captains and vice-captains began to recruit, Chen Hao directly released a pitch-black energy to envelop them, clearly telling the surrounding cultivators that they were going to act alone. Many disciples of the Divine Palace who were at the level of a leader came, but the cultivators who came here were basically from the third and fourth groups, which were the two groups that were closest to this place when they entered the primitive secret realm. Chen Shui, Long Ting, and Chen Hao were in a group, but the cultivators in their group basically didn't come. Otherwise, Chen Hao's actions wouldn't be justified. The sisters didn't need to perform their duties, and the group didn't belong to the East Flow Division. Chapter 693. What does the space-time door mean? I believe everyone has read about it in the primitive mystic realm. Once you enter, you'll definitely encounter cultivators from other races. There's a limit to one person's power. If you don't want to die, hurry up and join us. There's not much time left. Hiss hiss hiss, above their heads, the heaven and earth spirit chi gathered. The seven-colored light became brighter and brighter, and the ancient aura became more intense. In the depths of every cultivator's soul, the space-time disorder became more and more obvious. The primitive mystic realm that the space-time door leads to is the original universe's top geniuses' training ground. It runs through the galaxy and traverses the universe. If it wasn't for the collapse of the universe, we'll definitely die if we enter. That's right. The space-time law in the primitive mystic realm is so powerful. How powerful is the original universe? The universe's top geniuses' training ground isn't something we can withstand. However, after the collapse of the universe, although the training ground remains, the ferocious beasts are definitely extinct. Even so, the mechanisms and restrictions are probably not something ordinary people can withstand. Forget it, for safety's sake, I'll withdraw. I'll withdraw too. It's not necessarily safe to join a team. As the space-time door gradually formed, many cultivators joined the team formed by a few experts. However, there were also cultivators with weaker abilities who chose to leave before the space-time door formed. However, this was only a small number of cultivators who were self-aware and had a good mentality. Most cultivators, even if they were not strong enough, could not withstand the temptation of the training ground. However, let's forget it. It's not bad for us to cultivate in the sect ruins. Seeing this, Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yunwei looked at each other and said to Chen Hao, "Don't worry, we're here. Nothing will happen. The two of us are too weak. I'm afraid we won't be able to withstand the restrictions of the training ground. By then, we'll be a burden to you. However, we don't ask for much. Even if we cultivate outside, it'll be enough for us to break through to the Heaven Immortal stage when we step out of the primitive mystic realm. That's enough." "Master, do you have to be so courteous with your disciples? Don't worry, you won't be a burden to us." "Yes, Mother, Master Yunwei, don't think so much. The space-time law here is extremely powerful. We can go in and cultivate together. Who knows, the training ground space might be huge," Chen Shui said. Buzz. Buzz. At this moment, a violent buzzing sound suddenly came from the heaven and earth. The rainbow-colored light that poured down finally completely condensed into a pot lid-shaped light curtain, enveloping everyone. At the same time, an ancient door that was blooming with bright golden light like a mirage appeared above the ninth heaven. Huff huff, inside the golden ancient gate, dark clouds were rolling. Thick ancient aura and origin energy from the desolation era gushed out from the ancient gate like a pitch-black waterfall, pouring down. Wormhole. It's actually a space-time gate formed by a spatial wormhole. At this moment, a knowledgeable disciple suddenly exclaimed, "This must be the best training ground in the primal universe. How extravagant!" Hiss hiss hiss. It was also at this moment that an endless profound aura emerged from the pitch-black black hole of ancient energy. At this moment, everyone's souls began to tremble. The feeling of space and time being in disarray caused countless cultivators with weak wills to feel like they were seeing the flow of time or the future. All sorts of strange illusions filled their minds. Even Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei were no exception. Their eyes instantly became dull. On the other hand, Chen Hao and the other cultivators with formidable soul force and formidable strength were able to faintly see an ancient shrine flickering with seven-colored radiance within the surging dark clouds that were like a black hole. The entire shrine was refined from seven-colored jade crystals, and it was sparkling and translucent. Brilliant light flowed within it, and numerous profound and complicated ancient talisman markings seemed to be alive as they flowed within it, emitting a majestic aura that terrified the soul. A palace-type training ground. This is a palace-type training ground. It must be a training ground condensed by the top experts of the primal universe. What do you mean? Hearing that it was the cultivator who was the first to exclaim in shock, countless cultivators present looked over. There were even disciples of the sacred hall who voiced their doubts. They only felt that the palace that appeared was extremely powerful. Even the sacred palace of the human race might not be comparable to it. How powerful was the sacred palace of the human race? Before entering the primal secret region, they had cultivated in the sacred palace for more than half a year. They deeply understood this point. This is equivalent to the existence of the sacred palace of the human race. And it's definitely stronger than the sacred palace. Aha! The space-time door is about to be condensed. This time, we will all reap great rewards. Master, this is probably stronger than the sacred palace of the human race. Before the universe collapsed, it should be a top sacred palace of a powerful galaxy in this universe. It has the same status as the sacred palace. When it collapsed, the Almighty of the universe worked together to connect the starry sky and set up this training ground. If I'm not wrong, after all of you enter, countless people will be able to obtain the inheritance within. Of course, the space wormhole, which is the starry sky tunnel, is enough to show that many cultivators will be able to enter. It's actually that powerful. Hearing Old God's words, Chen Hao was shocked. Wang. Chi 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 chi. At this moment, the palace that resembled a sacred palace suddenly shot out rays of mysterious rainbow light that penetrated the wormhole. It was as if a bridge had been set up in the wormhole that led to the other side of the starry sky, and it poured onto every cultivator. Whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Almost at the same time, all the cultivators present turned into streams of light that merged into the wormhole and the space-time door. They disappeared in the direction of the sacred palace like shooting stars. Oh no! It was also at this moment that Chen Hao exclaimed in his heart. This was because an irresistible space-time energy caused Chen Shui and Long Ting, who were holding hands with him, to suddenly disappear. Chen Hao was extremely shocked. It felt like an instant, but the scene in front of him had completely changed, and he had entered a brand new space. There were barren mountains, and at a glance, not a single blade of grass grew. It was a stretch of barren land, and besides the ancient aura, even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth seemed to be extremely scarce. It was just like the barren mountains in front of him, barren and desolate. How could this be? Chen Hao was in disbelief. Just a moment ago, he had been excited about entering the powerful training ground left behind by the primitive mystic realm. But now, Chen Hao felt as if he had returned to the secular world. No, to be precise, it was a place that was even worse than the secular world. No, could it be an illusion? In just an instant, Chen Hao was shocked to discover that his perception was only a pitiful 100 meters. What did 100 meters mean? What surprised him even more was that his Dantian sea of energy had actually become a dry and desolate ocean. There was not even a trace of vital essence left, and his mind power seemed to have been sucked dry, and he could not use it at all. What was even more shocking was that Chun Hao's connection with his mind seemed to have been completely cut off. Even Chun Hao felt a fear of the unknown at this moment. He tried to summon Old God, but there was no response. To be precise, it was not that there was no response, but that Chun Hao felt as if he had turned into a mortal, the most ordinary person, a person without any magical powers. What's going on? Also, why didn't they teleport together with me? Such a sudden change was completely unexpected. He slowly closed his eyes and carefully sensed his surroundings, wanting to find the reason. However, after standing there for half an hour, Chun Hao reluctantly gave up. All of this was real. He had entered a barren space and had become an ordinary young man, a young man without the slightest bit of cultivation. This kind of feeling was like a huge mountain pressing down on his heart. Everything was sealed by an invisible force that could not be touched or seen. Moreover, it was so real that Chun Hao himself could not feel the feeling of being sealed. Only his clear mind told him that he was being sealed. Since this is a sacred ground for training, it must be a kind of training ground for cultivators. Could it be that the space I entered is a transcendent mortal? Chun Hao gazed at the barren mountain in the distance. Even his innate eyesight had become mediocre. Other than the legendary transcendent mortal, what else could it be? At this moment, he was no different from an ordinary person. In terms of physical strength, Chun Hao didn't even need to test it out to know that he was powerless. He couldn't even compare to his younger self. Gulu gulu, a sound that he hadn't heard for many years came from his stomach, and it made Chun Hao smile helplessly. Hunger. He was an Earth Celestial expert, but he actually felt hungry. How could this be? Chun Shui looked at the surrounding space in shock, as she sensed her own condition. The same shock appeared on Long Ting, the Lung sisters, Venerable Han Mei, and all the other cultivators who were in the same space. The old god said that when the universe collapsed, it would destroy the independent space laws and all life. Even if the area we were teleported to is a sacred ground for training, it definitely wouldn't contain independent space laws. In other words, this place can't be that big. Chun Hao shook his head. Even if his guess was correct, when he thought about the size of the primitive secret realm and the universe before it collapsed, even if the sacred ground for training wasn't big, it should be comparable to a small planet, right? Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be a problem. But now he was no different from an ordinary person. At this moment, even Chun Hao didn't know where to go or what to do. Could it be that he had to cultivate from the beginning? Rumble. At this moment, a loud sound suddenly came from the distant sky. Chapter 694. Crack. Dark clouds rolled, thunder and lightning filled the sky, and a fierce wind swept across the whole world. Walala! Are you kidding me? I'm going to. A master at the Earth Celestial stage had never thought that he would be knocked over by a fierce wind and drenched by a torrential rain. It would be a joke in the cultivation world of the vast universe galaxy. But now, it was happening to Chun Hao. Bang! Chun Hao saw stars, and his body felt like it was falling apart. He crashed into a protruding hill not far away. The 9 seals of celestial sealing. It's the 9 seals of celestial sealing. The information about the primitive mystic realm appeared in Chun Hao's mind, and he was shocked. According to the records, this was an extremely rare training ground among all levels of the primitive secret realm. In the billions of years of history of the vast universe galaxy, the primitive mystic realm had been discovered countless times, but the 9 seals of celestial sealing had only appeared a few times, and they had all appeared in the primitive mystic realm of the heaven celestial stage. This was an extremely cruel place for cultivation. It was much crueler than the turning into a mortal that Chun Hao had thought at first. Turning into a mortal meant that one's cultivation would be sealed. One had to break through the seals layer by layer and obtain the various daos contained in the seals. Then one could step out of this space. There were no other dangers except for the conflicts between practitioners. But the 9 seals of celestial sealing were different. All the practitioners who entered this space would not have their true core strength sealed. Instead, their true core strength would be drained, and they would be transformed into ferocious beasts by the space. I didn't expect to encounter the rare 9 seals of celestial sealing. Isn't this too miserable for the practitioners of the human tribe? Chun Hao, who was knocked dizzy, tightly grabbed onto a crack in the rock and hid in a shelter from the wind. He stared at the pouring rain and frowned as he pondered. He gazed into the distance, but besides the rain he couldn't see anything. He could only hear the rumbling of thunder and the howling of the wind. The 9 seals of celestial sealing. Haha. It's the 9 seals of celestial sealing, which is rarely seen in millions of years. It's tailor-made for the god tribe. Although it's suppressed, it's stronger than any other tribe. Haha. When Chun Hao and the others opened the seal, countless sect relics from all over the primitive mystic realm opened at the same time. Even though no one had broken through the 9 barriers, countless cultivators from the 10 major galaxies were transported to the 9 immortal sealing taboos. When they realized that it was the space of the 9 immortal sealing taboos, the cultivators from the Shen clan were the most excited. Due to their innately powerful bloodlines, they had an absolute advantage in the 9 seals of immortality and transcendent mortal 9 seals. This was especially so in the initial stages of the trial. Oh no, these are the 9 seals of immortality. At this moment, other than the cultivators who had entered from Chen Hao's side, the human cultivators who had entered from other places were the most terrified. There was no other reason. Among all the major races, the human race was born with the worst and weakest bloodline. This way. The storm lasted for a short 15 minutes before it came to an abrupt end. Dead silence was restored once again. At this moment, Chen Hao quickly climbed up a higher hill and yelled with all his strength. In the distance, he saw small figures scattered all over the place. Although he couldn't see their faces clearly, he could still recognize that they were the girls and the others. Fortunately, it's not far away, Chen Hao said comfortingly when he saw them looking at him and running toward him. Why are you so? Long Ting ran over quickly and couldn't help laughing when she saw Chen Hao's sorry state. Why are you so fast? Chen Hao looked at Long Ting in surprise. Although this girl was not far from him, her running speed was more than 3 times faster than Chen Shui and the others. Even the hill he was on was reached by Long Ting after a few leaps. I see you are. How dare you? Long Ting, who was laughing, grabbed Chen Hao and said with a red face as she waved her fist coquettishly. Okay, Long Mei is mighty. I won't say any more. I'll rely on you to maintain the world's peace for now. Chen Hao, whose drenched Taoist robe was grabbed by Long Ting like a little chick, said pitifully as he hung in the air. That's more like it. It took the girls Han Mei, Pan Donglu, Pan Dongsheng, and the others more than 10 minutes to reach a distance of a few miles. Even so, when they arrived, they were all panting and sweating. Why are you all fine? Why am I so miserable? Such a strong wind didn't blow you away? Didn't you encounter a rainstorm? Chen Hao asked confusedly. Although the others were also in a sorry state, they were not like Chen Hao, who was covered in mud. Blown away? The girls were also puzzled. Brother. Chen, I know what's going on. I've read a detailed record of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, which was once encountered by my ancestor. The storm just now was transformed by our energy. Brother Chen, your true essence is vigorous, and your essence qi and spirit are strong. It should be because you have reached a very high level of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, and triggered a seal that is too strong. Pan Donglu said. Yes, I also saw it. In the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, the stronger the seal, the stronger the seal. The only thing that is not restricted is the origin bloodline. So Brother Chen, I'm afraid. You're not even as strong as us. The strongest here is the god race, and the other races are also stronger than us. Their bloodline origin is strong. Pan Dongxing said. Then am I not very miserable now? Chen Hao glanced at the complacent Long Ting, and the expressions of the girls, especially Chen Shui, who slightly raised the corners of her mouth, and said gloomily, this is temporary. In the primitive secret realm, once one of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing is opened, all the other transmission points will be opened. which is also to ensure fairness. Moreover, in a short time, we should not encounter foreign races. However, we must go deeper as soon as possible. Cultivation and comprehension are the most important things to break through the restrictions, Pan Donglu said. Obviously, she was much more prepared before entering. Yes. Tell us in detail. What we saw was all introductory information, Chen Hao said. Chen Hao and the others saw the introductory information. The detailed information about the 9 restrictions of a mortal ceiling could only be recorded in the handbooks of the ancestors of the powerful families. The Long family had such a handbook, but even if there was a record of the 9 restrictions of a mortal ceiling, Long Ting, this lazy girl, could not have seen it. We are all mortals now, and we have to bear everything as mortals: eat, drink, gurgle, puff, haha. Pan Donglu just mentioned food and drink. Not only Chen Hao but also Fan Dongsheng and the girls, almost all of them, except for the foodie Long Ting, let out a gurgle sound. Chapter 695. The reason was very simple. Long Ting had just come in after a full meal, and Chen Hao and the others had not eaten for a long time. All their energy had been drained, and they had become mortals. It would be strange if they were not hungry. The deeper you go, the stronger the ferocious beasts will be, and the denser the energy of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven will be. There will also be ancient elixirs, immortal caves, ancient tombs, and so on. However, the 9 restrictions of a mortal ceiling are also the cruelest training grounds in the primitive secret realm. The 9 restrictions are 9 life and death checkpoints. Breaking through one checkpoint and recovering one's strength, you can go deeper. Flowing eastward said. We humans are limited by our bloodline origin and are the weakest race in the 9 restrictions of a mortal ceiling. It's okay in the later stages, but in the beginning, we can only avoid. Isn't the constitution of the elves worse than ours? Chen Shui asked with a slight frown. It's not the same. Under the 9 restrictions of a mortal ceiling, although they are similar to us humans in the beginning, the elves are naturally close to nature, and easier to comprehend and break through the restrictions. Especially the innate elves, which are the legendary embryos of Tao. Although there are very few of them, they are extremely powerful. They are the opposite of the Protoss, who have strong bodies. For the 2 races, the Protoss are the strongest in the early stages, and the elves are the strongest in the later stages. They are most suitable for them. Moreover, although the elves are weak in the early stages, they have wings like the winged race and are born with the ability to fly, which ensures their safety in the early stages. The winged race and the elves were all birdmen, who were born with the ability to fly. The dark demon race, the insect race, and the heavenly demon race were between the Protoss and the elves, and their comprehensive talent was stronger. The ghost race was born with the ability to hide. Under the 9 restrictions of a mortal ceiling, ordinary cultivators could not sense their existence, but they were absolutely awesome at self-protection and sneak attacks. The succubus race was born with the ability to create illusions, making people unknowingly fall for it. So it seems that we humans are the weakest. Yes, we humans don't have any advantage in bloodline talent. In addition to Long Ting, even Chen Hao frowned slightly at this moment. We are no different from mortals now. We have to go deep into the place where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven and earth are thick. Everyone discussed as they hurried forward. Through Pan Donglu and Pan Dongxing's detailed introduction, Chen Hao and the others also had a more detailed understanding of the 9 restrictions. Now, what they had to do was to quickly pass through the barren land before them, and enter the area with the spirit chi of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven, so that they could cultivate and comprehend. 2 hours later, a huge mountain range appeared in front of everyone. This mountain range is endless. After passing through it, we should have passed through the desolate area. Huff! Fan Dongsheng panted as he spoke. His sweat had long since soaked his clothes. His lips were dry and cracked, and he was hungry. Other than Long Ting, everyone else was almost the same. All of them were exhausted. Moreover, after Pan Donglu's detailed introduction, as expected, Chen Hao was the most miserable one. As a man, he was actually the last one. He was not even as good as Chen Shui, the 2 beautiful sisters, and the 2 old masters. What made Chun Hao even more depressed was that Long Ting had joked about carrying him on her back. It was really shameful. However, after gritting his teeth and persevering until now, although Chun Hao still looked miserable, there was a trace of imperceptible excitement in his eyes. It's so high. I'm afraid it will take a few hours to cross it. Usually, we can fly over it in a flash. Do you want to take a rest? Pan Donglu said. As he spoke, he looked at Chun Hao. Everyone, including Senior Immortal Han Mei and Senior Immortal Yun Wei, also looked at Chun Hao. Don't look at me. I'm very good. It doesn't matter if I rush up in one breath. Chun Hao wiped the sweat from his face and said domineeringly. After that, he walked forward directly. Chun Shui glared at Chun Hao and said secretly, "You want to save face." After 6 hours, they finally reached the top of the mountain. What they saw was green. Although there were still undulating mountains in the distance, there were ancient trees and forests, lush grass, full of vitality and vitality. The aura of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, the law of heaven, and the ancient origin energy rushed to their faces. The air was filled with a faint fragrance. In the forest, cranes were flying, birds were singing, and the brook was tinkling. Compared with the barren land where they had traveled for 10 hours in a row due to hunger and thirst, this was undoubtedly a paradise. Ah, finally we're out. Haha. Rabbit, hurry up. I'm starving. Finally there's food. Water. There's water over there. Excited shouts came from not far away. There were already people who had entered the mountain wilderness before Chun Hao and the others, and they excitedly pounced towards the mountain wilderness. There are spiritual fruits over there. There's water. Hurry up. At the foot of the mountain, only 1,000 meters away, there was a clear small lake. In the middle of the lake, there was a small tree swaying in the air. There were a few fruits emitting dense light. Even if they were only in the state of mortals, they could still see them at a glance. They were almost certain that the faint fragrance in the air was emitted from the fruit. There was no doubt that this was the extreme spiritual fruit. Long Ting pinched her nose and took a deep breath. Suddenly, her eyes widened. It's the rootless spiritual fruit. Ah, the rootless spiritual fruit only appears in the spiritual spring. It contains the purest spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and absorbs the law of heaven here. With it, we can comprehend and break through faster. The spiritual spring also contains a trace of, Pan Donglu said. Let's go and grab it. Bang. Long Ting directly stepped on the ground and ran over first. Sister Long Ting, be careful. There must be ferocious beasts in the water. Pan Donglu shouted in surprise. Foodie, when you see food, your speed is really fast. Let's go. Chun Hao glanced at everyone's surprised expression and said. Obviously, although everyone saw that Long Ting's speed was fast, they did not expect it to be so fast. Her speed was definitely 5 times faster than a mortal's. This spiritual fruit belongs to our third group. Everyone else, stop. A figure shouted loudly. He rushed over with a group of people. At this moment, there were only 2 groups of people. In addition to them, there was Chun Hao and the others. Obviously, these words were said to Long Ting, Chun Hao, and the others. It belongs to whoever grabs it. Long Ting appeared a little later, but she was obviously faster. How could she agree? Junior Sister Long, I didn't expect you to be so fast. However, can you grab it? Everything depends on strength. This is not against the rules. Don't make it difficult for me. After a slight hesitation, the leader of the third group said directly with a trace of cold arrogance in his eyes. He had already recognized Long Ting, Chun Hao, and the others. If this were not the 9 restrictions of a mortal ceiling, he might not have said so. But here he did not have to worry about anything. Everyone was mortal, and strength was strength in numbers. Why would they be afraid of Chun Hao? Moreover, if they could get the rootless fruit in advance, they would undoubtedly be able to comprehend and break through faster. As long as they maintained this advantage, the benefits they would obtain in the future would be immeasurable. This was definitely not as simple as a few rootless fruits. Long Ting was slightly stunned. She paused for a moment and looked at Chun Hao and the others behind her. She frowned and said, We only want 9, and the rest are yours. You can drink as much as you want from the spiritual spring. As for the rootless fruit, I can only say sorry. There are only a few dozen in total, and we can barely get one each. After hesitating for a moment, the leader of the third group said directly and coldly. Originally, because Long Ting and Chen Shui were both genius disciples of the Divine Temple, it was not a big deal to give them 2 or even a few, but now was not the time to be merciful. After all, they were 2 teams. In the short term, because they were in the same place, they would definitely be in a competitive relationship. If they gave Long Ting the fruit, and it was eaten by the powerful Chen Hao, wouldn't they be completely suppressed in the future? In that case, we can divide it equally according to the number of people, right? Sorry. Drink some spiritual spring water. You all can leave. We will take this place. The leader of the third group said resolutely. Go pick it. What are you waiting for? Yes. The dozens of cultivators who stopped were a little nervous. However, it was every man for himself. With the leader of the Divine Temple's disciples, they were just small soldiers and were not afraid of offending the Fast East sect and the others. This was all within the rules. Little Ting, let them pick it. At this moment, Chen Hao said calmly. Hearing Chen Hao's words, Chen Shui, the sisters Han Mei, Yun Wei and the others all heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that Chen Hao's character would not be able to hold back and flip out, but now the situation was forcing them. Once a conflict broke out, they would only be at a disadvantage. Long Ting glared fiercely at the leader of the third group and forcibly endured it. If it was her, she would not be afraid. Once she snatched it, she would run away. With her current strength and speed, although she could not beat them, running away was not a problem. But Chen Hao, Chen Shui and the others could not run away. Therefore, she could only hold back her anger and endure. Wait, let us drink some first so as not to dirty the water. Just as one person was about to rush to the spiritual spring lake, Chen Hao suddenly said. As Chen Hao spoke, he stepped forward. If you don't want to drink, go and pick it. The fifth group leader said coldly. No matter what, he had definitely offended Chen Hao and the others. Therefore, after hearing Chen Hao's words, he did not mind being more thorough. As long as Chen Hao and the others did not drink the spiritual spring, then Chen Hao and the others would not be able to obtain the trace of Heaven Dao Law in the spiritual spring. Wouldn't that be better? Plop. Plop. This is too much. Let's go. We will not lower ourselves to their level. Long Ting said angrily. It's fine, even if we can't drink it, we can soak our feet. Chen Hao smiled faintly, and was extremely calm. Chen Shui, the 2 beautiful sisters, Venerable Han Mei, and Venerable Yun Wei all looked at Chen Hao strangely. Is this still Chen Hao? When did his temper become so good, and he could endure it so well? It was just that they were so angry. It was obviously abnormal. Chen Shui walked to Chen Hao's side and said softly, Don't do anything rash. You are the weakest now. Just wait for the rootless fruit. Chen Hao's lips curled up slightly as he whispered. Splash. Ah. Fuck, there's a strange fish. Bang. Quick, a few people come and block it. This is a spirit trout. Our luck is too good. We have just arrived and we have already encountered rootless fruit, spirit trout, and spiritual spring lake. Haha. Splash. Splash. Fuck, normally I can kill 10,000 with one finger, but now I am too weak. Quick, a few people come and help. We can at least catch the fish, right? Long Ting said unwillingly. Sorry. Wuxian is also very sorry. I won't say the reason. Anyway, it is very painful to write now, and my right hand is swollen. Chapter 696. Leader Blue Maple is really domineering. Look, there are 4 female disciples of the Divine Palace among them. Pan Dong Lu will definitely become a disciple of the Divine Palace. Not to mention Chen Hao. That's called confidence. Leader Blue Maple is also a genius in the Divine Palace. He is only at the peak of the medium stage of the Earth celestial stage. In the future, he will not be worse than Chen Lin. There is no need to be afraid of them. It's just within the scope of the rules. If you offend someone, you will definitely offend someone. There is no need to be afraid. You know, under the 9 restrictions of the celestial sealing technique, you will always be ahead. Leader Blue Maple is so ruthless because he naturally treats them as competitors. If they were his weakness, he would not be so ruthless. Who cares about them? Since we have joined, we will act according to orders. This is a competition between them. It has nothing to do with us. Several practitioners who did not enter the water, but automatically formed a protective posture on both sides of Blue Maple. They looked at the cold and arrogant leader of the 3rd Regiment, and whispered to each other. Even they did not expect Blue Maple to be so domineering. These people were all from the East Division. Who didn't know Pan Donglu and Pan Dongsheng? Moreover, they also saw the terrifying strength displayed by Chen Hao when he fought Chen Lin. Long Ting, Chen Shui, and the Lung sisters all had the mark of a disciple of the Divine Palace on their chests, but Blue Maple did not give them any face at all. Long Ting clenched her fists angrily. It's okay. Strength is respected. They are also within the scope of the rules, aren't they? Let's go and soak our feet first. Chen Hao did not look at the domineering Blue Maple. He pulled Long Ting and continued to walk toward the small lake. This is too much. Brother Hao, I can't stand it. I will gather people and destroy them. Long Ting said angrily. She was, after all, the captain, and with an expert like Chen Hao, as well as Chen Shui and the Lung sisters, the 3 disciples of the temple, if she were to make a call, she would definitely be able to pull in many people. Don't gather people. Let's eat the spirit fruit later. Chen Hao stopped Long Ting with a smile and lowered his voice. You are so weak now. How can you eat? Brother Hao, you can leave first. I will fight with them later. Long Ting said. Hao, don't be rash. Chen Shui also whispered. Hao, forget it. Let's continue forward and look at other places. There might be more spirit fruits. There's no need to fight with them. Han Mei said. Her expression didn't change much. She and Venerable Han Mei had long been accustomed to the law of the jungle in the cultivation world. This wasn't limitless star. With their talent, cultivation, and strength, it was normal for them to encounter this kind of situation in vast universe galaxy. It was just like when they first entered the ruins of their sect. Even a place to cultivate was robbed. How could they not endure such excessive, teasing words? Forget it, forget it. Let's go. Long Ting looked at Chen Hao and hesitated for a moment before speaking. If she was alone, she would have run away as soon as she could. However, everyone else was present, which made her afraid. At this moment, Chen Hao's words and expression didn't seem like he was going to restrain himself at all, and he was going to erupt later. This caused Long Ting to not dare say anything too extreme. If she provoked this fellow, then the one to suffer in the end would definitely be them. Hee. Chen Hao smiled and shook his head. He casually picked up a piece of gravel with the tip of his foot. His movement wasn't obvious, but it fell into his hand. At this moment he was at least a few hundred meters away from Lan Feng and the others. They had all become mortals, so the other party definitely couldn't see him. Do you see it? Chen Hao said in a low voice as he gripped a fist-sized rock. The corner of his mouth curled up, and his expression carried a hint of arrogance. What's wrong? Pan Donglu, Pan Dongsheng, and the others also gathered around Chen Hao, looking at him in confusion. Break! Chen Hao shouted in a low voice, ready to enjoy the surprised expressions of everyone. However, creak. Damn so hard. Can you not be so funny? Chen Shui looked at the embarrassed Chen Hao and directly laughed out loud as she said. Long Ting, the sisters, and everyone couldn't help but laugh. Break for me. Creak. Brother Hao, we're all mortals now. Lung Ning laughed. Chen Hao's funny behavior made everyone temporarily forget about the suffocation in their hearts. Okay, let's go. Let's not lower ourselves to their level. Long Ting pulled Chen Hao and said, This stone doesn't give me any face. Let's pick another one. Chen Hao said hesitantly. He wanted to show off his skills to make everyone feel at ease, but he didn't expect to expose himself. He didn't want to admit defeat and picked up another stone that looked slightly worse, but the result was still miserable. Strange, this stone looks like an ordinary stone. There's no reason why it can't be broken. Brother mortals, we're mortals now. Pan Dongsheng couldn't help but say. He looked at Chen Hao with a respectful gaze, and didn't look down on Chen Hao because he made a fool of himself. In his opinion, Chen Hao might not be able to change his state of mind after becoming immortal. Leader Lanfeng, a total of 49 fruits. Leader Lanfeng, this spirit trout is too slippery, it's not easy to catch. Let's eat the rootless fruit and cultivate before catching it. At this moment, the cultivator in charge of harvesting the rootless fruit succeeded, and the other cultivators immediately gave up on catching the spirit trout. They were all mortals now, and it was difficult to catch a spirit trout that was as long as a person, even if there were many of them. You guys wait here. At this moment, Chen Hao gave up on pinching the stone, and looked in Lanfeng's direction as he spoke to everyone. After he finished speaking, he was about to walk over. Forget it, they have more people, we can't win. Long Ting grabbed the unwilling Chen Hao. With her strength, she was definitely able to pick him up like an eagle picking up a little chick. However, what Long Ting did not expect was that this time, Chen Hao only lightly reached out and grabbed Long Ting's hand. It was as if he was holding on to a steel bar. Don't worry. When have I ever done something I'm not confident in? Those rotten stones were really too hard just now. Just watch. You. Don't tell me you've comprehended the first seal? Long Ting asked in astonishment. That's not it. Chen Hao smiled and let go of Long Ting's hand. He turned around and walked towards Lanfeng's group. At this moment, Lanfeng and the others had already gathered together excitedly to distribute the rootless fruits. I'll go with you, Long Ting said. I'll go too. As a man, Fan Dongxing had no reason not to go. Since we're going to snatch, then let's go together. Chen Shui and the others knew that they couldn't stop Chen Hao, and felt that Chen Hao was definitely confident, so they spoke one after another. Chen Hao hesitated for a moment but didn't stop them. He said, "Follow behind me. It's so fragrant. Just the smell alone contains the pure energy of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven and earth. If we can eat one, it will definitely allow us to quickly comprehend some things. Leader Lanfeng, you can distribute it." Gulp gulp. Everyone's eyes lit up as they stared at the rootless fruits, which were emitting a dense aura and a strong fragrance. They swallowed their saliva. Yes, Leader Lanfeng, let's distribute it quickly, I'm starving. Leader Lanfeng? Everyone's gaze turned towards Lanfeng, but they discovered that Lanfeng was frowning and looking into the distance. What, you're not convinced? Lanfeng's gaze was cold as he stared at Chen Hao, who was slowly walking towards them. He asked coldly, "You are indeed very strong, but you have to understand the current situation. Otherwise, I don't mind teaching all of you a lesson." Is that so? Chen Hao calmly replied. His pace didn't change as he walked forward step by step. Stop. Don't force me to make a move. This is allowed by the rules. Lanfeng frowned. The others also stared at Chen Hao. Even though they weren't as arrogant as Lanfeng, their gazes were still filled with displeasure. Why don't you try? Chen Hao continued to walk forward calmly. He gestured for Long Ting and the others to stop. You're courting death. Cripple this brat for me. Leader Lanfeng. Hearing Lanfeng's words, the cultivators beside him didn't immediately carry out the order. Instead, they looked at him a little apprehensively. One of them said, "Everyone knows each other. Whoever is stronger will get the fruit. Just teach them a lesson and forget about it." Yes, Leader Lanfeng, just let them know how difficult it is and retreat. These people obviously had some misgivings. After all, the rules were the rules. If they really crippled the 4 temple disciples and the Panese current, they would definitely be in trouble in the future. They didn't have the same background as Lanfeng. Shut up. Do you still want the spirit fruit or not? This is an order. You're just executors. Even if the sky falls, I, Lanfeng, will hold it up. With the 9 seals of immortal sealing, do you think we're afraid of him? Whoever defeats him will get 2 rootless fruits. 2? I'll do it. You don't know what's good for you. Strength is everything. Under such circumstances, you still want to snatch it? I don't care who you are. Whoosh. A burly man with a ferocious face had been waiting for Lanfeng's words. When he heard that there were 2 rootless fruits, he immediately jumped out. This guy was obviously a demon cultivator. The blood of a demon beast flowed in his body. His body was 2 heads taller than Chen Hao, and he looked like a giant. Crawl down for me. The fierce man opened his powerful arms, looked down at Chen Hao, and slapped him directly. Slap. Chen Hao suddenly raised his head and slapped him hard in the face. The huge figure rolled directly. He didn't even have time to scream. He flew 3 meters away and lay there motionless. He fainted directly. The crisp and loud sound of the slap stunned everyone. Was this a mortal? In everyone's opinion, the fierce man who stood out could crush the slender and petite Chen Hao to death. However, the result was that he was sent flying by a slap from Chen Hao. Chen Hao's footsteps didn't even stop. His expression was calm, but the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. He looked straight at Lan Feng and approached him step by step. Go, all of you go. Lan Feng was also shocked by Chen Hao's slap. He was even more shocked by Chen Hao's calm expression and mocking gaze. He was a little panicked as he gave the order. Bang! Just as the shocked crowd was about to rush forward, Chen Hao suddenly took a step forward and rushed forward. His speed was incomparable to that of an ordinary mortal. He quickly closed in on Lan Feng. Chapter 697. Come on. Stop him for me. Slap. 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 Chen Hao's footwork was light and agile. He slapped Lan Feng repeatedly with his right hand. Every time he slapped Lan Feng would fly out. After 5 or 6 consecutive slaps, everyone was stunned. They didn't understand why Chen Hao, who was also a human, could be so ferocious even though he was not strong under the celestial ceiling restrictions. This was real strength, not a simple technique. Because of this, it was even more terrifying. After all, everyone present was an ace at the Earth's celestial stage. Even if they had become mortals because of the celestial ceiling restrictions, their eyesight, reaction, and basic combat skills were absolutely solid. There was no reason for the gap between them to be so big. In a moment, everyone stopped in their tracks in fear, and retreated in fear. All of them kept quiet out of fear. This was simply a ferocious beast in human form. Come on! Chen Hao grabbed Lan Feng's neck with one hand and lifted him into the air like a chicken. Lan Feng, who was cold and domineering just now, was so frightened that his face turned pale and he struggled to roar. Slap, slap, slap. Chen Hao didn't say a word. He controlled his strength and slapped Lan Feng several times in a row. Lan Feng was dizzy and saw stars. In a flash, Lan Feng's face was swollen like a pig's head. Many of his teeth were knocked out, and his mouth was full of blood. He couldn't even scream. Bang! Immediately, Chen Hao threw Lan Feng up and kicked him straight. Lan Feng was kicked 10 meters away, and fell to the ground like a dead dog. Get lost! Chen Hao's gaze swept over the others as he calmly spat out a word. But no one dared to make a sound. The situation was compelling. All of them kept quiet out of fear, and retreated dejectedly. Lan Feng, who hadn't fainted yet, struggled to stand up. However, he clutched his chest, which was full of broken ribs, and howled at Chen Hao with his mouth full of air. Li Gonghua light. No one understood what he said. Disappear in 1 minute, Chen Hao said calmly. At this moment, compared to the fierce man, Chen Hao's figure was still small. However, in the eyes of the crowd he had become a ferocious beast in human form. Moreover, he was a cold-blooded and merciless beast. Especially his calm tone and expression. It made people feel that even if he killed them, he would not blink an eye. Crash. In an instant everyone, including Lan Feng, who was still talking nonsense, suppressed their anger and left in a hurry with people supporting them. What are you waiting for? Come and eat, come and eat. I'm so hungry. At this moment, Chen Hao's face changed faster than flipping a book. He returned to normal and sat cross-legged in front of a pile of rootless fruits. He picked them up and began to eat them. It's really sweet and tastes good. It is indeed a special spirit fruit. The moment the fruit entered his stomach, Chen Hao felt a pure stream of heat appear in his dantian. At the same time, he could clearly feel the mysterious laws, although very weak. Brother Chen Hao, quickly try to refine and comprehend after eating one. The spirit fruit that grows under the 9 restrictions of celestial ceiling is not just a spirit fruit. It can naturally absorb the laws of heaven here. If we eat it, it can help us to comprehend and break through faster. However, we are mortals now, so we can't eat too much at once. Fan Dongsheng reminded. Crunch, crunch. Before the crowd could eat, Long Ting rushed over without hesitation. She held one fruit in each hand and ignored Fan Dongsheng's reminder. Well, master, come and eat. If you wait any longer, the foodie will finish it all. Then you two eat too. Don't be shy. Chen Hao handed 2 fruits to Fan Dongsheng. Thank you, brother. You're the foodie. Crunch, crunch. Long Ting glared at Chen Hao without concealing anything, but did not stop eating. Brother Chen Hao, there is a cave over there. Let's cultivate here for a while before moving forward. Such a place is rare. It is completely luck that we encountered it. It is better to improve our strength first. Fan Dongsheng took the spirit fruit and handed one to Fan Donglu, but he did not eat it directly. Instead, he pointed to a man-made cave across the small lake and said, Well, this place is really good. There is a spirit spring and spirit trout. Let's cultivate here for a while. Chen Hao replied. The entrance of the cave wasn't large, but the inside of the cave was very large. Moreover, it wasn't completely man-made. Inside there was a small stream that connected to the spirit spring lake. It was clearly the upper reaches of the spirit spring, and it was very deep inside. It was rugged and winding. On both sides of the cave, there were many independent rooms that were man-made. Inside the rooms, there were even low-lying areas that formed spirit springs. Inside each cave, there were actually runes protecting it. The ceiling of the cave was inlaid with night crystals that illuminated the inside of the cave, making it as bright as day. Obviously, this was a place specially for cultivators to meditate in seclusion. Chen Hao took out 6 rootless fruits and gave them to Fan Donglu and Fan Dongsheng, but the 2 refused. Finally, Chen Hao said, Don't drag us down. The 2 were embarrassed to accept it. How did you recover so fast? Can't the 9 seals of Immortal seal you? After Fan Dongsheng and Fan Donglu chose a small cave and began to refine the spirit medicine, Qin Shui, who had been holding back for a long time, finally asked, I know what's going on. It must be his physical body that evolved automatically. Long Ting said. It seems so. My physical strength is still recovering, and it's recovering faster and faster, but there is still no true essence in mind power. Chen Hao said. Originally, he was the most miserable and the weakest. At the beginning of the journey, he was the most miserable and the most depressed. He was a dignified man, but he was not even as good as Senior Immortal Han Mei and Senior Immortal Yun Wei. But gradually, he found that his strength was getting stronger and faster. At that time, Chen Hao knew that his abnormal genes and physical body began to evolve automatically to adapt to this space. In fact, when he started to climb the mountain, his strength was far beyond ordinary people. It was just that he was sensing this subtle change and did not show it. Looking at you two, the 2 of us are really old. Let's go find a cave to cultivate. You 2 can chat for a while and start cultivating too. Don't waste the medicinal power. This rootless fruit is very precious. Han Mei Venerable said. Yes, more than 10 years ago, you were still little guys in front of us. Now Master has to look up to you. Master, don't think like that. How old are you? In the cultivation world, how can you be considered old if you are less than 1,000 years old? In the past, the conditions of the Wuxia star were not good. But in the future, with us here, we can get whatever you want. You can eat the rootless fruit like a fruit. Later, I will catch some spirit trout. When I have mind power and true essence, I will open the space. There are many good things. In the future, you can enjoy it as much as you want. Haha, Chen Hao said. Well, you don't have to comfort us. Masters, Brother Hao is telling the truth. You are only a few hundred years old. Don't think like that. Otherwise, you will lose your Taoist heart. Not to mention the Wuxia star. Even in the vast universe galaxy, more than half of the cultivators are stuck in the Earth's celestial stage. Many of them are thousands of years old. In fact, you are limited by the Wuxia star. You don't have powerful unique skills and the support of your foundation. Otherwise, you would not be worse than anyone else. Look, the disciples you taught have all become disciples of the Holy Temple. This is much stronger than any of the top clans. Long Ting actually spoke in a rare serious tone. They, Little Shui, Huan and Lele, we have some credit. How are we didn't teach anything. Brother Hao is a freak. He is an exception. What are you talking about? Okay, let's go. What are you doing? Taking a bath. Don't you see that I am covered in mud? When Senior Celestial Han Mei and Senior Celestial Yunwei left, Chen Hao took off his clothes in front of Chen Shui, Long Ting and the sisters. Bro, let's go, Chen Shui said angrily. Ha ha ha. Long Ting laughed foolishly. Brother Hao, give me your clothes. I will help you wash them. The well-behaved Lung Ninghuan blushed, and took the Taoist robe from Chen Hao. Huan is the best. Do you want this too? Ah. Plop. You are murdering your husband. Chen Shui stretched out her hand and pushed the shameless Chen Hao into the spiritual spring. Although she knew that he would not take off his shorts, she could not stand his flirting. You deserve it. Let's go. The four girls laughed and walked out. Voila! After the four girls left, Chen Hao came out of the water. He wiped the water droplets on his face and smiled. Immediately, he sat cross-legged in the spiritual spring and began to cultivate happily. The 9 restrictions of celestial sealing obviously can't suppress my body. As long as I can comprehend the special great Tao law here, I can quickly control my true essence in psychokinesis. However, I must advance step by step. The medicinal power of the rootless fruit can't be wasted. Chen Hao sensed that the rootless fruit's energy and great Tao law in his dantian were becoming more and more active. His mind slowly integrated into it. Tao law nature. Even if he did not have the protection of a freak body that could evolve on its own, Chen Hao did not feel any pressure. He followed his heart and cultivated naturally. This did not mean that he wanted to slow down the pace of cultivation, nor did it mean that he gave up on exploiting himself. It was a kind of mental detachment. Just like Lan Feng and the others just now, Chen Hao's calmness was not an act. In fact, he did not take them seriously at all. Anger? Those people were not worthy of his anger. When it was time to attack, he would attack. Of course, if his physical strength did not recover at all, he could only endure it. There was no need to be a hot-headed prick. After a full 4 hours, Chen Hao slowly opened his eyes. I can't even store a bit of true essence. The heavenly Tao law contained in the rootless fruit is incomplete. It seems that it is impossible to comprehend it in a short period of time. The spirit trout should also have heavenly Tao law fragments. Let's catch one and try. Splash! Chen Hao jumped out of the spiritual spring and came to the entrance of the cave. He saw the Taoist robe that Lung Ninghuan had placed at the entrance of the cave. Chapter 698. After an hour, what made Chen Hao depressed was that after losing the rootless fruit in the spirit spring lake, the spirit trout had hidden somewhere. Even though Chen Hao had recovered some physical strength, he could not find any trace of the spirit trout in the cool and deep lake water, let alone catch it. Fortunately, there is no shortage of ordinary fruits and animals here, so I don't have to worry about food and clothing. Chen Hao looked up at the sky, then down at the ground, and then at the lush vegetation in the depths, and thought to himself, a complete law is dissolved in heaven and earth and is omnipresent. If I want to recover my spiritual power, I can only rely on my own comprehension. In fact, after swallowing the rootless fruit, Chen Hao also found that although the fragments of the heavenly Tao contained in it could be directly in his dantian, he still had to rely on himself to comprehend it. The only advantage was that it shortened the time to catch the fragments of the heavenly Tao. These fragments of the heavenly Tao were extremely mysterious and complicated, and definitely could not be comprehended in a short time. As Fan Dongxing and Fan Donglu said, in the first level of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, there were not many places with cave residences and spirit springs for cultivation. If a cultivator was obtained by the spirit fruits and spirit herbs and really took this as a shortcut, he would probably end up in a miserable state. Since it's a place of inheritance, there's no reason for it to be obtained through spirit herbs. When this training space was set up, it was definitely impossible to integrate the heavenly Tao into the spirit herbs. The reason it's here now is because the spirit herbs have naturally absorbed part of the heavenly Tao fragments after a long time. To be precise, it's the result of their evolution. Just like how my physical body evolves with the environment. It must be like this. Just as Chun Hao stood in front of the cave and pondered, the others also came out of their cultivation state. Obviously, they also found that they had obtained the fragments of the heavenly Tao, but could not comprehend it for the time being. After a discussion with the others, Chun Hao really decided to focus on cultivation and comprehension here for the time being. Little Wu, you're finally here. In the sect ruins, two figures sat cross-legged and looked at Helian Wuxia, who had just arrived. This was already the second year since Chun Hao and the others entered the 9 restrictions of Immortal Sealing. Tantai Lian and Xia Yu had already arrived. At this moment, there were no other cultivators in the entire sect ruins. They had not seen each other for more than 10 years in the primal secret realm. Naturally, they were very excited to see each other again. At this moment, Helian Wuxia became more and more ethereal like an immortal. Her beautiful hair fluttered and her small face that was as cold as the moon seemed to be shrouded by a layer of faint moonlight. It allowed people to clearly see that absolutely beautiful appearance, but in the blink of an eye, it was as if they hadn't seen anything at all. Xiao Wu, what's going on? Tantai Lian and Xia Yu asked in surprise. At this moment, Tantai Lian had already coiled up her fine black hair, clearly telling everyone that she was already a woman. In fact, this was the first time she had truly fused her yin and yang with Chun Hao. After losing her primordial yin body, she was already a woman. However, she did not tie up her long hair. It wasn't until the last time she really walked together with Chun Hao that she changed her hairstyle. She, who was originally otherworldly and elegant, had an additional trace of tranquility and gentleness. Using modern words to describe her, she was a beautiful young married woman that attracted endless fanciful thoughts. The picturesque Xia Yu's pure and flawless eyes had not changed in the slightest for many years. Not to mention that she originally had a face that could topple cities. Even if she didn't, just her pair of beautiful eyes could mesmerize all living beings. My power of reincarnation is becoming stronger and stronger. Xiaolian, Yu, I'm a little scared. Helian Wuxia, who had landed beside the two, directly expressed her worries. This was the first time she had seen a familiar sister in more than 10 years. During this period of time, especially after she had boarded the aircraft and rushed here, when she was meditating and cultivating on the aircraft, some scenes that did not belong to her at all would automatically appear in her mind. It was as if thousands of lifetimes had floated and sunk, seriously disturbing her tranquil heart lake. However, not only did it not affect her cultivation, it instead became even more terrifying. At this moment, with every breath she took, Helian Wuxia felt as if she had become one with heaven and earth. Her body was filled with energy that was as vast as the mountains and seas. She was certain that as long as she was willing, she could trigger the heavenly punishment at any time and step into the heavenly immortal realm here. However, she did not dare to. Xiao Wu, your aura is very strong, so strong that it scares me. What are you afraid of? Xia Yu asked, puzzled. I'm afraid that I'm no longer myself. Helian Wuxia expressed her worries. How can that be? We've asked the experts who guided our cultivation. Although the power of reincarnation is the most mysterious power in heaven and earth, the awakening of 100 lifetimes of reincarnation, it's only the awakening of power. It will definitely not affect you. No, this is different from what the seniors who guided us said. I've awakened not only the power of reincarnation, but also some scenes that do not belong to me at all. There are many. Otherwise, I would be able to trigger the heavenly punishment and step into the heavenly immortal realm now, Helian Wuxia said. As she spoke, her gaze slowly swept across the entire sect ruins. Suddenly, she let out a cry of surprise. What's wrong? Tantai Lian and Xia Yu frowned and asked. They turned around and followed Helian Wuxia's gaze, but there was nothing unusual. However, Helian Wuxia seemed to have not heard their question. She stared blankly at the sect ruins. Rumble. In her mind, the collapsed palace was uprooted from the ground and quickly reassembled. One by one, Cultivators dressed in ancient attire, young and old, appeared inside and outside the palace. Some were singing and laughing, and some were sitting cross-legged in cultivation. Every palace exuded an immortal aura that Hellion Wuxia had never sensed before in the vast universe galaxy. In the martial arts arena, there were young disciples competing. There were countless youths watching. Experts with white hair and beards who looked like old immortals were holding down the fort. Rumble. Suddenly, the heavens and earth darkened. An extremely terrifying aura of destruction appeared outside the entire sect. It was also at this moment that all the cultivators looked towards the void. Immediately, all the scenes in Hellion Wuxia's mind disappeared. It was as if she had entered a starry void. There was no sound, no energy. There was only a young girl whose face could not be seen clearly. She was surrounded by several old men sitting cross-legged in the middle. The faces of the old men could be seen clearly, as if they were telling the young girl something. Suddenly, the old men moved again. Hellion Wuxia's eyes widened. What did she see? She saw the stars and the moon. Every old man could take the stars into their hands with a wave of their hands. Reincarnation is immortal. Go, child. After the young girl sitting cross-legged in the middle turned into a bright flowing light and disappeared into the endless void, a gentle and old voice appeared in Hellion Wuxia's mind. Although it was a language that Hellion Wuxia had never heard before, she clearly understood what the old man was saying. Xiaowu xiaowu? I. Hellion Wuxia didn't know why, but her beautiful eyes were already filled with sparkling and translucent tears. That intermittent scene was like a memory hidden in her mind. Especially that gentle and old voice at the end. It was more like it was narrating a kind of vicissitudes and solemnity that existed since ancient times. That young girl whose face couldn't be seen clearly made Hellion Wuxia feel that she was inextricably linked to herself. Everything was like a movie. She wasn't sad, but from the depths of her heart, it was as if she was infected by the subconscious sadness. What exactly happened? Xiaowu, what happened? What did you see? Why are you crying? Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian asked. Although the two of them did not see anything abnormal at all, and only Hellion Wuxia was abnormal, at this moment, the two of them knew that something must have happened to Hellion Wuxia. I don't know. All the illusions disappeared. In front of her was still the broken and desolate sect ruins that were filled with an ancient aura. Hellion Wuxia, who felt like she was in a dream, still had tears in her eyes as she murmured. During this period of time, her mind was restless. The power of reincarnation was crazily awakening. She had encountered countless similar scenes, but they had never been so real. Although the scenes today were still intermittent, they were relatively complete, especially the young girl, the old man, and the last voice that appeared at the end. Xiaowu, don't worry. The power of reincarnation will definitely not let you become another person. Although we don't know what the power of reincarnation is, in 100 reincarnations, every life is a new beginning. And it is also you. Perhaps there will be some deep memories that will be awakened with the power of reincarnation. Just like the absolute art that you awakened, it will be passed on to you. But those are all memories of the past, aren't they? Don't be afraid. Tantai Lian held Huyen's cold little hand tightly and comforted her. Yes, Xiaowu, don't be afraid. Xia Yiyu also said. Although the two of them did not know what Hellion Wuxia saw or sensed, they knew that she must have been affected by the power of reincarnation. Xiaolian Yiyu, I want to walk around here. Hellion Wuxia heard the two of them, and regained a trace of calmness. Before coming, the flying device's AI had already told her the situation here in advance. She knew that Chun Hao and the others had already been transported into a training space. They just had to wait here. We'll accompany you. No need, I want to walk around by myself. Hiss. After Hellion Wuxia finished speaking, her figure flashed and turned into a stream of light, walking towards the barren and broken ruins. Although all the illusions had disappeared at this moment, they still appeared vividly in her mind. She landed in front of a collapsed palace, and seemed to subconsciously search for something. When she found a rusty plaque in the ruins of the palace, she waved her hand and released a gentle energy to clear the stains and dust on it. Then, she saw 5 ancient characters that she didn't recognize at all. She had never heard of them before. But it was these 5 words that made Hellion Wuxia widen her eyes in a daze. Under the control of her subconscious, tears once again flowed uncontrollably. Chapter 699. Why? Hellion Wuxia stared at the 5 ancient characters on the plaque. Her voice trembled as she muttered to herself. She didn't recognize them, and she was sure that she had never really seen these 5 ancient characters that had been buried in the dust for who knew how many years. However, the image that had just appeared in her mind was like an illusion, and she clearly saw the original appearance of the palace in front of her in the past. On the plaque, there were these 5 characters. Is there really a past and present life? Is this world and this sect really related to me? Hellion Wuxia was certain that all of this was because she had awakened the power of reincarnation. She wanted to understand what was going on, but other than the images that appeared in her subconscious mind, as well as the sadness that made her cry uncontrollably, she was unable to obtain any other information. She flipped through the ruins one after another and found broken and decayed plaques one after another. She saw ancient words that were exactly the same as the scene that had just appeared in her mind. This made her understand that the scene that had just appeared in her mind was definitely not an illusion, but something that had truly existed. Little Wu, what's going on? When Hellion Wuxia returned to Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian's side in a daze, Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian asked a little worriedly. Just now, although they didn't accompany Hellion Wuxia, they looked at her from afar. Hellion Wuxia's appearance made them faintly worried. I saw many scenes, the scenes of the sect ruins in the past when they were still intact. The names of each collapsed palace were not wrong. I saw before the universe collapsed. A few old men used the great magical power of picking the stars and catching the moon to do something to a girl. They said, "Reincarnation is eternal, go child." When Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian heard Hellion Wuxia's words, they were stunned speechless. Because of Hellion Wuxia, they also had some understanding of 100 reincarnations. This was a kind of mysterious power that was similar to a bloodline inheritance, but also superior to a bloodline inheritance. Any cultivator who could awaken the power of reincarnation contained the terrifying energy accumulated from 100 reincarnations. As one's realm increased, this energy would gradually awaken and become one's own use. At the same time, it would be accompanied by the awakening of a unique inheritance. However, under normal circumstances, it wouldn't involve any memories of past experiences. Eternal reincarnation. Do you think I'm that girl? In that case, would I still be me? Hellion Wuxia asked apprehensively. Even though she knew that Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian wouldn't give her an answer, if she didn't say it now, she would feel very sad, very worried, and very afraid. She wanted to pour her heart out. That won't happen. Xiao Wu, don't worry so much. You have to know that this universe has been destroyed for an unknown number of years. Tens of millions of years or even billions of years. How many reincarnations would that take? If you were her, you would have already completely awakened. Xia Yuyu said. That's right. Perhaps it's the influence of the remnant aura of the ancient sect. Your physique is more suitable for this place, causing the scenes of the past to appear in your mind. The most likely reason is that your physique is similar to that girl's, said Tantai Lian. Perhaps. Don't think too much. Yes. Hellion Wuxia sat down cross-legged. Although what the two of them said made sense, she knew that her situation wasn't that simple. After the 3 of them chatted for a while, they entered a state of cultivation. However, in less than 2 hours, Tantai Lian and Xia Yuyu suddenly sensed an extremely strong energy fluctuation, which made the 2 of them open their eyes in astonishment. Immediately, they also saw the astonished Hellion Wuxia. The 3 of them were actually wrapped up in layers upon layers of mysterious runes. The area of 300 meters around them became extremely resplendent 7-colored rays of light. Moreover, the fluctuation became more and more intense. What's going on? Did the restriction open? Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian asked in surprise. The place where they sat cross-legged to cultivate was the core of the 9 layers of restriction that Chun Hao and the others had activated before they entered the sacred training ground. However, when they arrived, it had already closed. But now such a strong fluctuation actually gushed out, and the two of them instantly sensed that the source was Hellion Wuxia. That's not right. According to Xiaoji's information, a space-time door was opened here before. It was a sacred training ground that was transmitted to this universe. How could it be opened again? Could it be that they're coming back? Come with me. We can go in. Hellion Wuxia didn't have time to answer the two of them, and directly urged them. Hiss. Although Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian didn't understand what was going on, they hastily rushed to Hellion Wuxia's side. The moment the three of them grabbed her, a seven-colored pillar of light suddenly enveloped the three of them. The space distorted, and they disappeared from the sex ruins. Chi, crack, 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 rumble, rumble, rumble. At the same time, the entire space of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions suddenly shook violently. The energy of heaven and earth roared, and the heavenly Tao reversed. Terrifying thunderbolts filled the entire space of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions. Violent winds and torrential rain, mountains collapsed, and the earth cracked. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. How can it be? Someone just broke through the third restriction. How can the fourth one be here? All the cultivators, no matter where they were, no matter what they were doing, at this moment, restrained their auras to avoid the terrifying shaking of heaven and earth. No one would have thought that in 2 years, only a few cultivators had broken through the third restriction. Most people hadn't even comprehended the second restriction, let alone the third one. However, at this moment, the terrifying shaking of heaven and earth and the changes in the heavenly Tao's laws were enough to prove that someone had broken through the fourth restriction. In the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions, once someone broke through a restriction, it would cause the entire space to shake and the heavenly Tao's laws would change, and the second restriction would open. Crack. Rumble. What no one expected was that as soon as the shaking of heaven and earth ended, the heavenly Tao's laws changed again. Shockingly, someone had comprehended the fifth restriction. However, this was still not the end. When the 9th restriction was completely opened, the space of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions became one, and there were no more barriers. All the cultivators stared blankly at the sky. They didn't dare to believe this was real. In theory, this shouldn't happen no matter what. It was simply impossible for it to happen. No matter how high one's comprehension was, no matter how talented one was, there was no way one could completely comprehend the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions in such a short time. After all, one had to comprehend and break through the restrictions one by one. How could one break through consecutively? However, this was the reality. Everyone sensed the changes in the heavenly Tao's laws. Apart from shock, they also felt an indescribable sense of panic. Who could be so powerful? When the fourth restriction was broken. Flying immortals. Immortals, 3 immortals. Quick look. What? While all the cultivators in the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions were immersed in shock, Chunhao and many of the other cultivators who had been teleported in saw an unbelievable scene. In the 9 heavens, amid the terrifying lightning, a rainbow-colored light streaked across the sky like a shooting star. 3 dreamlike figures could be vaguely seen. They were wrapped in the rainbow-colored light, and it was as if immortals had descended from the 9 heavens. One of the figures was sitting cross-legged, and the other 2 were gazing at her from the side. Soon, they were heading toward the depths of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions. They've broken through the 4th restriction of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions. The nearby cultivators who saw the strange phenomenon in the sky were extremely shocked. Just from the lightning surrounding the 3 girls in the 9 heavens, they were certain that one of the 3 had broken through the 4th restriction. When the 4th restriction was broken, Chunhao and the others, who were sitting cross-legged and cultivating in a cave abode on a mountain peak, rushed out of the cave abode and stared at the void. Even Chunhao was extremely shocked at this moment. He had not been the first to break through any of the first 3 restrictions. Although he had comprehended it not long after the others had broken through, he had not been the first to break through. This was a situation that Chunhao had never encountered before. One had to know that his comprehension ability was quite impressive, and it was also one of the aspects that he was most confident in. However, In front of the geniuses of the 10 major galaxies, he had lost his previous advantage, which also made him feel pressured. At this moment, he had not even fully comprehended the third restriction, but the fourth restriction had been broken first. The 9 celestial ceiling restrictions had 9 layers of space. If the first restriction was broken through, the space before that restriction would be merged into one, and the heavenly Tao's laws would change. However, this did not mean that every cultivator only broke through the space barrier. Whether the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions had restrictions, and how many restrictions there were, still depended on the individual's breakthrough. This is too fast. Someone was the first to break through the third restriction 3 days ago. And now he has broken through the fourth restriction. It must be the same person. How could it be so fast? Long Ting said in surprise. I'm afraid the geniuses of the 10 major galaxies are far beyond our expectations. Chen Shui stared at the changing wind and clouds, frowned slightly, and said softly. As she spoke, she looked at Chen Hao, who also had a solemn expression on his face. She knew very well that Chen Hao, who had never lost to anyone in any aspect, must have more than she had thought. The 9 celestial ceiling restrictions have no advantage for the human clan. You don't have to worry about anything. The top experts of the human clan are the strongest in the 10 major galaxies. The higher the realm, the stronger the advantage of the human clan. Venerable Han Mei said softly. Although her and Venerable Yunwei's cultivation was almost at the bottom of the group, their mentality was the best. They were afraid that Chen Hao and the others would be shocked, so they comforted them. Chi. Rumble. That's. Suddenly, a dazzling 7-colored light surrounded by lightning appeared in the sky above Chen Hao and the others. It was as fast as a shooting star, but 3 dreamlike figures could be vaguely seen. Surrounded by lightning and turbulent core, they have comprehended the fourth restriction. Why do I feel a little familiar? Chen Shui said in surprise. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 700. It's Xiaolian. And Xiaowu and Yuyu. Chen Hao's heart skipped a beat. Although he was about to break through the third restriction of the 9 restrictions of Immortal Ceiling, the increase in his perception was limited. He could only see the silhouettes of the 3 dreamy figures wrapped in colorful light and thousands of thunderbolts. He could not see them clearly at all. Not to mention him, even Chen Shui, who had awakened her ability to perceive, couldn't sense the slightest bit. She only felt that the 3 hazy figures were somewhat familiar, but Chen Hao instantly determined the identities of the 3 people. It was because of the Phoenix inheritance. Bam! Chen Hao stomped his foot and immediately rose up like a cannonball. His powerful physical strength created a huge pit in the hard rock ground, sending gravel flying. At the same time, he sent out messages to summon the Phoenix in his mind, trying to stop Tantai Lian and the others. But no matter how fast he was, no matter how hard he tried to summon them, there was no effect at all. The 3 people who were like shooting stars streaking across the 9 heavens didn't seem to know of his existence at all. They still maintained the same posture, and instantly disappeared into the distance. After that, just like the other cultivators, Chen Hao was shocked by the continuous and successive tremors of the heavens and the earth. What was going on? Helian Wuzi, Xia Yuyu, and Tantai Lian should not have made it to the gate of time and space. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to appear here. However, they had appeared. It would be fine if they just appeared, but why were they wrapped in the Thunder Tao Law and entered so quickly as if they were immortals and broke through the 9 restrictions of Immortal Ceiling? How are you sure it's Xiaolian and the others? At this moment, Chen Shui and the others rushed to Chen Hao's side and asked. The aura of the Phoenix inheritance can't be wrong. Xiaolian can confirm it. Although she can't see clearly, the other 2 are Xiaowu and Yuyu. According to Xiaoji's calculations, if they hurry, they should have met up about now. Chen Hao said. How could they come in? And, they must have broken through the 9 restrictions of Immortal Ceiling. Is that possible? Long Ting stared at the still shaking void and asked in confusion. Chen Hao looked at everyone and asked. Do you feel the aura of the 7-colored light and the law of lightning? They clearly pass by us, but they don't seem to be in the same world. It feels like the aura of a space-time door? It seems so. I also sense the aura of the space-time gate. The one sitting cross-legged should be Xiao Wu. Could it be related to Xiao Wu's reincarnation power? It shouldn't be. Although the power of samsara is profound, it shouldn't be able to continuously break through the 9 restrictions. Chen Shui frowned as she pondered. Chen Hao also thought of this possibility, but like Chen Shui, he rejected it. Everyone discussed for a while but to no avail. This was completely beyond their understanding. If Chen Hao could communicate with the old god, he might be able to deduce what was going on. Unfortunately, even though he was close to breaking through the 3rd hex, and possessed a certain amount of mana and telekinesis, he was still unable to communicate with the old god. He could only give up and put the matter aside for now. Either way, it was still good news to know that the 3 of them had made it to the core of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world. At the end of the gray space, specks of blue willow. The wisps appeared. A well-preserved group of ancient palaces could be vaguely seen. The palaces and pavilions were carved with dragons and phoenixes, and the profound aura of the heavenly Tao filled the air. From afar, many cultivators could be seen flying in. We're here. At this moment, apart from Chen Hao, who was still relatively calm, Chen Shui, Long Ting, and the others all took a deep breath. Their expressions were solemn, and their fighting spirit surged. They had already experienced such a scene twice. Every time someone broke through the first layer of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world, a huge group of palaces would be opened in front of them. To be precise, it should be an ancient city. According to everyone's estimation, this should be a ring-shaped city. Cultivators from all directions could enter as long as they went deep. Of course, the prerequisite was that someone had broken through the 9 restrictions of the city. Otherwise, they would be sealed by a powerful barrier and unable to enter. Such a situation was like a myriad of streams converging, gathering layer by layer. When they reached the last layer of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world, all the cultivators who had entered would probably gather there. A fierce battle was inevitable. On the 1st and 2nd layers, the situation was still fine because it was too large. The cultivators they encountered were basically human. Although they had a few conflicts with ignorant fellows, they could easily deal with them. Although they had heard that some people had encountered foreign races, Chen Hao and the others did not encounter them. This is the 3rd layer. Conflicts are inevitable. We might encounter foreign races. Everyone be careful, Chen Hao said. The previous 2 situations had already made everyone clear that the situation of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world was very different from the situation recorded in the information. After a long time in the wilderness, although many powerful demon beasts and spiritual items of heaven and earth had been born, the true treasure land was still in the palaces on each layer. All kinds of ancient treasures, secret manuals, pills, and so on were spread throughout every palace. It was as if this holy land of training had become one of the inheritance points deliberately left behind before the collapse of the universe. In order to obtain it, besides one's own talent, one needed great strength to deter others. Big Brother Chen Hao, none of us have fully comprehended the 3rd restriction. I'm afraid we can't enter any of the palaces. Is it appropriate for us to go now? Fan Dongxing said. It's fine. We haven't comprehended it, and the others haven't either. Let's seize the territory first. The comprehension of the heavenly Tao in the city is deeper and faster. But we have too few people. It's still very troublesome. Last time, we relied on you and Little Ting to deter others. This time, it'll be even more difficult. Look at those groups that entered. There were at least 30 or 40 people. Chen Shui frowned and said, You haven't fully comprehended the 3rd restriction, so we can't enter the palaces. It's fine if you're alone, but I'm afraid we'll have problems. This was indeed a problem. No matter how strong a person was, in the absence of a powerful true essence and psyche power, the limitation of pure physical strength was still very great. In the face of the temptation of ancient treasures and secret manuals, even the internal conflicts of the human race were quite tragic, let alone the foreign races. If they could quickly break into the palaces and enter, they wouldn't have to worry about being surrounded. But if they couldn't enter, Chen Hao could ensure his own safety, but he couldn't protect everyone present. This didn't mean they were weak, but that they had too few people. It was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. Once they fell into a chaotic battle, they would inevitably lose sight of one. Why don't we do this? Little Ting and I will go in and seize a large palace first. You two can cultivate in the periphery of the palace complex. It won't be long before I can open it. At that time, Little Ting will take you two over. Chen Hao pondered for a moment and thought of a compromise. Everyone felt that this was safer. They didn't have to worry about Chen Hao and Long Ting. Chen Hao's body would automatically evolve to the peak strength of the 9 restrictions of Immortal Ceiling. Just by relying on this, he didn't have to fear being surrounded. Long Ting, who had comprehended the second restriction, always had the advantage in terms of physical strength. Although she wasn't as freakish as Chen Hao, she was still extremely powerful among the human race. If she couldn't win, she could run. An hour later, everyone arrived in front of an ancient city that stretched as far as the eye could see. Majestic ancient energy and fragments of the heavenly Tao filled the void. The palaces that shone with a faint blue light like willow. The wisps were even more mysterious and profound. It felt as if they had walked into the graveyard of the ancient gods. To be precise, this was equivalent to the graveyard of the ancient gods. When the universe collapsed, all life in this universe, no matter how strong they were, couldn't survive. But they could rely on their powerful abilities to leave behind their indestructible wills and heavenly Tao laws. In the city, every palace could be considered the graveyard of an ancient almighty. In the first 2 levels, Chen Hao and the others had entered many palaces. Even the worst palace was left behind by at least a heavenly immortal expert. Moreover, the heavenly immortals of this world were far more powerful than the heavenly immortals of the vast universe galaxy. Look, the leader is Chen Hao. The largest palace we saw on the previous level was the one they obtained. Oh, he defeated Lu Fingnan's team? I can't see how strong he is. That's because you didn't see him. Lu Fingnan's team of 100 was brutally ravaged. At that time, Chen Hao was fierce. He went deep into the crowd alone and captured Lu Fengnan. He forced Lu Fingnan's team to retreat and occupied the palace. It's best if we don't provoke this person. Don't look at how there are only 9 of them. 4 of them are genius female disciples of the temple, and the other 2 are young men and women. They are both top geniuses of East Flow City, and will definitely become temple disciples. As for that Chen Hao, although he isn't a temple disciple, his strength is terrifying to the extreme. It is said that when they were at the transmission point of their sect ruins, even Chen Lin was sent running away by him. Is that so? Then I think there will be a good show to watch. Just because we don't provoke them doesn't mean others will be afraid. They can at most be considered the strongest at your transmission point, but they definitely can't compare with ours. Our transmission point has Chen Lin and Moling treading snow together, forming a team of 300 people. No one dares to provoke them. Do you know who broke through the second of the 9 immortal ceiling taboos first? Moling treading snow. Even now, he still hasn't made a move. But the strength of his aura is absolutely far more terrifying than Chen Hao's. We'll definitely meet him in this area. Let's wait for a good show. As for the strongest palace in the core area, there's no need for us to think about it. It will definitely be occupied by Moling treading snow. There's nothing we can do. When we encounter these freaks, we can only give way. This is only the 3rd level, and the foreign races came all the way here just to show off. But after another 2 or 3 levels, we'll automatically meet them. At that time, it will be even more cruel. Let's wait here for a few more days. Let's gather our teams and increase our strength first. Let's look at the situation. If things really don't work out, we might as well join Moling treading snow's team. Don't. If we stay with them, we'll just be drinking soup. As long as it isn't a life or death situation, we absolutely cannot stay with them. After Chen Hao and the others entered the city through the wide city gates, they saw a group of over 40 people sitting cross-legged near the city gates. 2 leaders of the temple disciples were discussing in low voices. Chapter 701. Chen Hao realized that compared to the previous two forbidden cities, the cultivators in this city were much stronger. He had seen some of them before, but most of them he had never seen before. Moreover, most of the teams had more people. Gathering in groups to display the strength of a team would become more important towards the end. Of course, there were also solo cultivators and Dao companions, but these were the minority. Moreover, only a few of these people dared to enter the core of the city to fight for territory. Let's stay here. When they went deeper and passed by a row of smaller palaces, Chen Shui looked at the few cultivators around her and said, "You guys be careful too. There are even more experts on this level. Our area involves at least 10 armies." Chen Hao and Long Ting responded and went deeper. They knew very well that as they went deeper, the competition in the city's forbidden zones would become more and more intense. The only reason it was still mild now was that they had not really encountered a foreign army. Once the density reached a certain level, it was inevitable that the city's forbidden zones would become fierce battlefields. Ancient palaces were shrouded in dense mist. The sky was gray, and the heavenly Dao laws were everywhere. After the 9 immortal sealing restrictions were broken in one breath, the entire area of the 9 immortal sealing restrictions became chaotic. Every level of the city's forbidden zones became the best and quickest place for people to break through and comprehend. There was no doubt that the third forbidden zone was the place with the densest and most complete fragments of the heavenly Dao laws. As long as they completely understood the third restriction, they would be able to form the corresponding runes and open the treasures of any palace. "Brother Hao, it's about time." After going deeper for dozens of kilometers, the two of them had already reached the core of the city. The circular palaces that were arranged in all directions also became more and more magnificent. At this moment, 16 palaces formed a circle, and at the core was the tallest and largest palace that was like a mountain. Long Ting knew that the core palace would be a place that all the teams would fight for. In Long Ting's opinion, it was not very possible for the two of them to snatch it. Yes, let them fight for the core palace for now. Of these 16 palaces, we'll take one first. If anyone dares to open their eyes, I don't mind killing them. Don't. Just intimidate him. With the command medallion in our possession, every move we make here will be recorded. If we kill our own clansmen without sufficient reason, the Divine Temple will definitely punish us. You've seen it for yourself during the last 2 fights. No matter how unreasonable a person is, they would at most be crippled. Big Brother Hao, I feel more and more that this 9 restrictions of immortal bestowment area is too different from the holy lands of training and tempering in the records. This is like a dead end that forces everyone onto a path of slaughter. In the end, I wonder how many people will be buried here. Yes, this is no longer a pure training ground for the 9 restrictions celestial bestowments. There's no training ground that would gather all the treasures in a single city. Every single palace here is a treasure trove. Moreover, once someone obtains it, the palace will vanish into thin air. Moreover, when you think about the eternal will within the palace, it's not difficult to deduce that these palaces, or perhaps the entire city, were formed by an ancient mighty figure using a great ability. Apart from the primordial spiritual treasures and secret manuals that we obtained that were real, everything else we saw was fake. This is equivalent to selecting an inheritor. So you're not wrong when you say it's a path of slaughter. If you want to obtain even more formidable magic treasures and secret manuals, then you have to step on ghastly white bones to advance. I've thought of this since a long time ago. I won't take the initiative to start a slaughter, but if someone dares to open their eyes, then I don't mind starting a slaughter first. This is something that will happen sooner or later. The level of ferocity in the inn might far exceed our expectations. Chen Hao spoke with a calm expression. Chen Hao had never been afraid when facing competition. After he comprehended his own Dao and returned to his true self, the Dao of nature, Chen Hao clearly understood that the Dao of nature wasn't to have no desires, nor was it to stand aloof from the world. It was to maintain a calm heart of an expert and face everything. It's really cruel. Fighting and killing is too boring. I haven't rested for a long time. Long Ting said. Due to the uniqueness of this girl's cultivation method, the way she grew up was different from the majority of cultivators. Even though she had adapted for a period of time in the Divine Temple, She couldn't change the habits that she had cultivated since she was young. She couldn't stand up when she could sit, and she couldn't sit when she could sleep. Having delicious spirit fruits was better than anything else. But ever since she came to the 9 restrictions of a mortal ceiling, under Chen Hao's coercion, she had no choice but to work hard. This was undoubtedly the most painful thing for her. Fortunately, it was Chen Hao. If it had been anyone else, they probably wouldn't have been able to subdue this girl. But it had to be said that Long Ting's talent and comprehension were extremely heaven-defying. She was only second to Chen Hao among the 9 cultivators when she was forced to do so. If this girl became interested and put in 100% of her effort, she wouldn't pale in comparison to Chen Hao. Moreover, every time she broke through a limit, her physical strength would increase to an extremely terrifying level. Her current combat strength was absolutely not something that Chen Shui, the 2 sisters, and the others could compare to. Otherwise, Chen Hao wouldn't have brought her in alone. It's good that you're used to it. Cultivate in front of this palace. The way to break through the 3rd restriction as soon as possible is the way to go. If you can break through before me, you'll get the biggest share of the pills and spirit fruits this time. Chen Hao tempted with a faint smile. Out of the way. Out of the way. In less than 4 hours after Chen Hao and the others immersed themselves in cultivation, more and more cultivators poured into the city from the huge entrance. It was obvious that after sensing that the 9 restrictions of a mortal ceiling had been broken one after another, they were all making their way to the 3rd restriction as quickly as possible. Groups of powerful cultivators released their auras. As soon as they entered the city, they demonstrated their strength and dominance. It was normal for cultivators to fight for this place. Those who were weaker could only avoid them even if they were dissatisfied. Brother Moling? Huh. Nice to meet you. I didn't expect you to come in as well. The 2 groups, each consisting of 100 people, met at the city gate. In one of the groups, a young man with an imposing appearance and an unruly aura was surrounded by a crowd. After seeing the leader of the other group, a trace of seriousness flashed across his eyes, and he immediately revealed a trace of a rare smile as he called out to the leader of the other group. Moling Taksha's white clothes were purer than snow. His long black hair was scattered behind his back. His figure, which was clearly not very tall and appeared somewhat cultured and refined, was actually emitting a wild and arrogant aura at this moment. Those bright star-like eyes gave one a kind of cold, determined, and fierce feeling, just like a wolf king. Moling Takshu immediately frowned slightly when he heard the other party take the initiative to greet him. He immediately revealed a smile and said, "It is indeed a pleasure to meet you. It seems that there are a few legions in the 3rd restricted area. I just don't know how many legions there are." No matter how many there are, I, Bai Yan, will fight for the core palace. Bai Yan was one of the top experts in the Earth celestial stage of the Divine Temple, and one of the 50 commanders. He was ranked 9th among the disciples in the Earth celestial stage of the Divine Temple, 1 rank higher than Moling Takshu. "Same to you," Moling Takshu said lightly without any hesitation. After that, he ignored them and walked in quickly. Bai Yan's group also strode forward. The battle hadn't started yet, but under the calm appearance, there was a smell of gunpowder. The leaders of both groups were calm and relaxed, but the cultivators under them were staring fiercely at the other group and rubbing their palms. This is going to be interesting. I didn't expect Bai Yan to come too. Commander, is Bai Yan very powerful? Nonsense, he dares to challenge Moling Takshu. How can he not be powerful? In the Earth celestial stage of the Divine Temple, Bai Yan is ranked 9th, 1 rank higher than Moling Takshu. However, this was the ranking before they came. Both of them got their positions by challenging the top 10 experts and didn't fight. It's hard to say who's stronger and who's weaker. If there are no accidents, the core palace here will definitely be obtained by the 2 of them. Even the 16 palaces in the 2nd circle have nothing to do with us. Damn it, after passing this stage, we'd rather spend 10 days to half a month running to a city area further away. As long as we don't encounter foreign tribes, it's still possible for us to get into the 2nd group. This is a fucking group of death. 50 commanders, and now only 2 of the top 10 have appeared. How can they let others? Fuck, it can't be right? Just as this disciple was complaining gloomily, a group appeared at the city gate, neither too fast nor too slow, causing this guy to widen his eyes and mouth. What a sexy and beautiful woman. Haha, Commander, you're drooling, smack. Without any warning, the disciple who was widening his eyes and mouth slapped the back of the young man's head. Fuck, do you want to die? Keep your voice down. At this time, without the commander saying anything, the cultivators beside him were already scared silly. Fuck, that sexy and beautiful woman walked lightly, her beautiful eyes looking around. After she entered the city leisurely, there was a long tail behind her. In an instant, there were already more than 100 people in sight, but it was as if there was no end, and they continued to swarm in continuously. Not to mention how powerful the sexy beauty was, just the number of people in the group was enough to scare people to death. At this moment, everyone was as silent as cicadas in winter. They stared blankly at the group that entered in a single file. They looked at that enchanting and seductive back, then counted the number of people who entered in a single file. When there were about 300 people, they finally reached the end. It was only when the sexy beauties group gradually moved further away and was about to disappear from everyone's sight that they realized that there were actually 30 temple disciples following behind the sexy beauty. It was not their fault that their eyes were not bright. It was just that the sexy beauty was too dazzling, so dazzling that it made all the cultivators within 100 feet of her lose their luster. As long as they looked at that figure, they would ignore everyone else around them. What did I just see? Oh my god! Humainyang. It must be Humainyang. What a powerful and terrifying group. Humainyang. She is Humainyang? Not only were the non-temple disciples shocked, but even the temple disciples were shocked. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.